Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the NXTGEN Racing GT3 Championship Season 2, as brought to you on the sim racing platform of iRacing on PC. And tonight we get the second round of the 12-round calendar underway, and we'll be taking a look at Lobby 2, the Coach Dave Academy and Next Level Racing Academy, our second split of drivers, albeit no less popular than our first split, as they take on the Sebring International Raceway circuit here in the United States of America. Of course, tonight we'll be bringing you the previous races, if you will. These races took place last night, so we'll be looking back on the action. So whilst it's not quite live in terms of our drivers are out there on circuit right now, we're going to do our best to make sure they get the full live experience, as always, as we bring you all of their racing action and see how they got on. So talking about our schedule then for tonight, it'll be the case in Greenwich Mean Time or UTC. You can see the times there on your screen. At 8 o'clock this evening, so in 14 minutes time, we'll be getting underway with the qualifying session. 15 minutes to determine who will be on pole for the sprint race. The sprint race immediately follows at 8:15, and that will be a 15-minute race where it's all holds in and all's barred action in order to try and get the best possible result within class, whether you're in the pro class or the AM class. It's all in, no strategy involved other than get to the front and take the position and take the win. After that, we'll be hearing from our drivers in the post-race winners' interviews, and then we'll be taking a brief break before returning for the feature race at approximately 5 to 9 tonight. And in the build-up to that, of course, we'll be looking ahead to the 60-minute race where you've got that all-important mandatory pit stop, the strategic element having a major factor. In the commentary box tonight, you have myself, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain a Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. And remember, this broadcast is being brought to you live by NXTGEN Racing over 3 media platforms. Firstly, the official NXTGEN Racing YouTube channel, which I can see many of you already camped out on and saying hello, and we hope you're all doing well, whichever media platform you're tuning in on. But you've got the NXTGEN Racing YouTube channel. Alternatively, you've got the NXTGEN Racing Facebook group. That's facebook.com/groups/NXTGEN Racing. And then last but not least, if you're inclined to use Twitch, you can always tune in via TX141 on Twitch, my personal Twitch channel. But speaking of the fact this lobby is sponsored by Coach Dave Academy and Next Level Racing, let's introduce our two senior sponsors without whom it would not be possible to bring you a Lobby 2. So we start off, of course, with Coach Dave Academy. Who are they? Well, they need no introduction because they are the home of amateur and professional sim racers looking to up their game through coaching, setups and track maps. Whether you're looking to gain a tenth of a second, a whole second, or just find a way to better drive the car or better tune the car to your ideal standards, Coach Dave Academy is the go-to place. Whilst they started off on a set of course of competition on PC, they have expanded recently into the realm of iRacing, so there's plenty of setups in store, track maps, you name it, they've got it, and plenty of information and coaching available. So if you want to know more, check out Coach Dave Academy. Secondly, we also have a Next Level Racing. Now, Next Level Racing, meanwhile, founded in 2009, is the world's leading simulation brand, revolutionising simulation with its industry-leading product range. With a clear focus on innovation and quality to meet the demanding needs of sim racers, Next Level Racing's designs and technology shall take your sim racing experience to the next level. And if you want to know more about their products, be sure to head to their official website, that's nextlevelracing.com today for further information. That website again, nextlevelracing.com. Now, we're very grateful to have both Coach Dave Academy and Next Level Racing supporting us. They are providing us with a good number of prizes within the prize pool and also helping us get things underway. And again, without them, we would not be able to bring you this series. But taking away from our sponsors, we now head into our standings. So after the opening round at Daytona last week, which saw a lot of drama but also some very close-knit action, particularly in the pro class, which we're starting off with here, and in particular we're talking about the feature race with the neck-and-neck finish between Josh Wiggins and Paul Scott, which saw Paul Scott take the win by a small margin in the end, and you can see that in the background there of the standings, that margin being infinitesimal. It's the case that right now your championship leader after one round is Josh Wiggins, picking up the fastest lap in what I believe was the feature race rather than the sprint race. There was a slight typo there on the sheets going to publication, where you can see Josh Wiggins leading by 44 points to 43 over Paul Walton. A 1 point difference between the two teammates, and in P3 you've got Lambert Wedder there, who is really leading the charge after the top two. Paul Scott in P4 and Gareth Williams in P5, with Gareth Williams taking that pole position in the opener, but it was the case, it was all to go wrong in the sprint race and see Gareth Williams not finish on top, but instead fall a little bit down the order, with Wiggins and Walton being able to break away. In the feature race, he wasn't able to find his way through the pack compared to the drivers around him in the pro class. And then outside of the top five there, we've got Stefan Albanese, Dan Mori, Rick Jansen, Matthew Proutin and Alistair Kirk completing your top 10 there, when you can see how close it is between Albanese and Kirk, separated by only 5 points after one round. As we look outside the top 10 in the Pro Class then, we can see a number of our drivers who managed to get some good points on the board, and also some drivers who were either disqualified or did not start in the race or had disconnections. Michael's still there in P11 right now, our contender to get back into the top 10 tonight on 22 points currently, only 1 point ahead of Nigel Stock, who will be looking to make up for what was a very difficult feature race after a good performance in the sprint. Stuart Taylor and Nathan Scott as well there on 16 and 15 points respectively, but Nathan Scott being disqualified from the sprint race and as a result not being able to maximise his points haul, and we can see Chris Perry there with the unfortunate disconnect leading to him losing out on some potential points in the feature race. But we are still also waiting for the arrival of Don Hunter, Ed May, Jack Young, Paul Williams and Sam Holman in the Pro Class, and we look forward to seeing them potentially take to the circuit tonight. Meanwhile, in the AM class, we're looking down further the field, it is the case that Mark Baker, after the opening round, is leading on 46 points with a 4-point advantage over Mark Sykes. Now, Mark Sykes, of course, picking up that brilliant win in the sprint race to be matched by Mark Baker picking up a brilliant win in the feature race, but where the two differ was in the fact that Sykes wasn't able to quite find his way all the way through the Anfield in the feature race, having had that rare opportunity to start right from the back, having picked up the win in the sprint race and by a considerable margin down towards the back, and in the end he wasn't able to quite make it through into the top three, which would have put him on parity with Baker. Renus Hammerin in P3, who unfortunately will not be joining us tonight due to an injury sustained, so we wish Renus all the best, of course, and hope for his return to the series soon. And on 36 points, he'll be feeling the pinch tonight, not being able to take part at Sebring. And then further down there, we can see Luke Hobson and Mark Jardine completing our top 5, while our top 5 being separated by 15 points from P1 to P5. Outside the top 5, we've got David A. Favo, Stefan Vessels, Elwin Sykes, Reece Young and Adam B.M. Quinn making up our top 10, and a particular note should be made to our P7 man of Stefan Vessels, who picked up pole position, the fastest lap in the sprint race and the fastest lap in the feature race. Now you may be wondering, why is he not all the way at the top? Well, simply put, the races did not go Vessels' way, and whilst he is a rookie, he is a very fast rookie, it is the case that I think just some of that experience building at the moment, you can imagine as time goes on with the character building experiences, we'll be seeing the South African driver come charging up through the field in the AM class, and I do reckon he could be a major contender, and a lot of eyebrows raised already at the impact he had in the season opener. Outside of our top 10, as we look to P11 net, Tom Porter picking up 16 points in the sprint race, but not able to pick any points up in the feature race due to a disconnect, which was very unfortunate for Porter, who was on course to potentially move himself well into the top 10 after the opening round. Liam Tack, Tom Delaney and Josh Brown, they're separated by 4 points overall, with Delaney picking up a did not start for the feature race, and Josh Brown having a disconnect in the feature race, and Gareth Mills in P15 on 11 points there, disconnecting from the sprint, but able to make it into the feature and stay to the end. Darren Doherty, Andy Walmsley, Chris Keenan, Jack Wyborn and Paul Hennessy completing our top 20 there, and it is unfortunate that Keenan, Wyborn and Paul Hennessy not able to make it to the races for the season opener, but hopefully we'll be seeing them out on circuit today. Meanwhile, in for the team standings, and whilst the majority of our AM drivers do race under what is the banner of effectively privateers, so they are individuals, they're not representing any teams here, we're going to give you an update on those team standings just so you are aware of them. And as you can see here, it is the case that we still have Apex with MMV Esports and 83 points ahead of Ignium Spark there after the opening round across both lobbies, Lobby 1 and Lobby 2, a gap of 5 points between the two of them. And McChallenge B2 and RD Simsport and LuxSim24 of MMV Esports all in hot pursuit of our top 2. Outside of the top 5, RD Simsport and 2, NXTGEN Orange, NXTGEN Blue, SBMS, that's Switchback Motorsport, and RTA all continue to try and push on for top 5 positions at this point. Of course, it's early doors, but they are a little bit further down. And then looking outside of the top 10 there, we can see we do have Delta Motorsport in P11, Altitude Esports in P12, and CXR Project Black in P13, separated from P11 to P13 by only 4 points, and an extra point down to Ignium Motorsport there. The fight to get into the top 10 could not already be so intense as it already is, and that just goes to show you how tight it is going to be over the season proceedings. And Team Tetrouge there in P15, McChallenge being in P16, and we can see TRN Blue and TRN Orange giving the pursuit. Team Racing Netherlands there on 34 and 33 points respectively. Team Racing Netherlands being very consistent across the both teams, but not able to pick up the best of points in that season opener. And Ignium Blaze and DDR there completing our top 20 of the teams. Now, as for the circuit, well, we are here today at Sebring International Raceway for what is the second of our 3 rounds in the United States of America. Now, I know what you're thinking at this point. We're in America once again, and we're in Florida once again. But we've moved to Sebring, and this circuit very different from the circuit of what is Daytona. Whereas last time it was all about slipstream, today it's going to be about handling and knowing where you can go for the overtake and where you need to be patient and look for the move on the inside later on around the lap. Consisting of 17 17 corners as shown by the circuit map here by simracingwiki.com, who we're very grateful to have working with us. And as we take a look at the reference lap here as provided to us by Lammet Weather, let's take you around. So in the long charge then down towards turn 1 and making his way into the long left-hander here. Heavy braking bringing him down to 4th gear, not as heavy as it may be as he makes his way through the corner, now charging through turn 2, the right hand kink here in the lead up to the braking zone for 3. A much heavier braking zone coming down to 2nd gear, tights the apex here but flicking the car to the right as he then makes his way into the left-hander of turn number 5. Nailing it in 3rd gear and keeping it nice and flowing through the apex, but a little bit of oversteer there on the exit as he got the power down, but he set himself well up here for big bend known as turn 6, the long right-hander that leads all the way up to turn 7, the hairpin. And accelerating all the way up to 5th gear, and now heavy on the brakes here, while the slightest corners on the circuit, if not the slightest, into 1st gear. We can see where to drop, and as he makes his way through, attacking that apex, and as he rides through turns 8 and 9, making his way through the right-hander of 9 as we speak. It is the case, he's now got the long flow up towards the turn 10 braking zone as he comes into the right-hander here, coming all the way down the gearbox once again down to 2nd gear, keeping it nice and close, but getting a little bit wide of apex there and using the flow of the car and the roll of the car to flow through. But as he comes through 11 and into 12, the right hand kink of 12 here, flat out once again the run up towards Tower Corner at 13. Coming down to 2nd, another tight right hander, plenty of overtaking opportunities through at turn number 13, but now it's the long charge into the final 3rd of the circuit. And here's where the circuit really changes, because we go back onto the old runway which this circuit originated from. We've come off of the tarmac, we're going onto the concrete right now, and as Weather makes his way through 14 and then into 15, he comes up towards Le Mans Corner here at 16, a long flying right hander in that snake-like sequence of corners, and having to balance the roll of the car with the throttle as he makes his way now down the long charge of the Ullman Straight here, all the way down to the final corner known as Sunset Bend, turn number 17. And if you're looking for a late apex here, watch this, as Weather's going to have to trail brake into a blind apex that is beyond the concrete wall there as he makes his way, and he's not quite at the apex, he's trailed his way down to 3rd gear, and now he finally hits that apex. That's how late you've got to go, but as he makes his way through, gets back on the power early and uses the width of the circuit to come charging across the timing line there to complete our reference lap. Very thankful to Weather for putting that one together. Now, as for our rules, without which we would not be able to bring these proceedings, of course, because without rules, we could have chaos. It is the case that we can see our setups tonight will be the iRacing high downforce fixed setups for the races. And in the sprint race, each driver will have 1 fast repair available. And if a driver picks up 17 or more instant points, they will receive a drive-through penalty. As for the feature race, our drive starting fuel loads will be restricted to 70%, and that leads to the mandatory pit stop, where our drivers will be required to take on fuel. Changing tyres will be optional, so if our drivers decide to do the entire race on a single set of tyres, then so be it. They'll save themselves some time in the pits, but will they lose pace out on circuit? No, they haven't got a fresh pair of boots to run around on. Each driver will of course have 1 fast repair available in the feature race as well, and if a driver should accumulate 25 or more instant points, they'll receive a drive-through penalty for their actions. But going from the rules then to the proceedings, I believe we are just about to get qualifying underway as we look to your live pictures here, and the qualifying session has just started as all of our drivers begin to make their way out the pits, which is fantastic to see. And as a result, we've got 15 minutes of qualifying to go. And in fact, we're a little bit ahead of schedule by 2 minutes, but I'm sure you guys and girls are not going to complain at that, as we are now seeing our drivers make their way out. And Stefan Albanese here being one of our very first drivers to come out onto the Sebring circuit. And as I mentioned previously, this circuit being a circuit that originated off an old American air base in the Second World War. And the thing about this means, because we have the change of road surfaces, you're going to see it's a very bumpy circuit when we ride on board with certain drivers. It almost looks as though they're driving over hot coals in the fact that the car's just bouncing around. But that is one of the big challenges with this circuit, is the fact that you have to manage those transitions of the road surface going from tarmac to concrete and back. Now, this is the oldest race circuit or road race circuit in the United States as well. It's the longest standing circuit in the United States. If any came before it, they no longer are used today, but this circuit is still being used as we speak in real life, and it is a very popular circuit within the world of iRacing and sim racing in general. But as more and more of our drivers are making their way out on right now, it is the case that in terms of qualifying here, we did see in the Apex Racing Academy lobby last night that there were some drivers very heavily held up on their qualifying laps by simply being in traffic when they went on to flying laps. And that is the one thing you do not want to catch here, is a traffic jam at the wrong time, particularly in the first 2 sectors of the lap, or the first 2 thirds of the lap, I should really say, because this lap is made up of effectively 7 sectors. But when we talk about sectors here, we're really talking about thirds of the lap, and that's how we're going to be referring to it from this point onwards. The first 2 portions of the lap are made up of very tight corners, apart from the run into turn 1, and it's really in the final third where the circuit opens up into a much higher average speed, and that's where you may want to catch up behind someone, but as you make your way out Le Mans Corner down down the Allman Straight towards Sunset Bend, because you can pick up quite a bit of a toe down there, and as a result potentially save yourself the best part of 2 to 3 tenths of a second, as we continue to see more of our drivers making their way around right now. And we do look to right now Nathan J. Scott making his way up into the right hander here of what is turn number 10. Another driver's registering on the circuit map right now because they have yet to go on to a flying lap, and that's why our screens are a little bit empty. But we can see Stefan Albanese making his way through turn 1, and we ride on board with a BMW M4 driver as he attacks the circuit for the first time in anger in this qualifying session. So coming up into 3 in that BMW M4 and coming nicely down through the gears before coming through the right hander of 4 and up into 5. And as he balances the throttle, he'll be looking to get on the pound nice and early, the pro driver, as he exits the corner. They're very smooth, and those race curves being something that our drivers have to tackle as well, given how high they are, and as a result can unsettle the car as he charges down towards turn number 7. The long run down here into the heavy braking zone, and as he makes his way on in at this point, very composed there, Albanese. And that's one thing we did observe over the course of Daytona, was whilst Albanese did not have the best of the results available to him, he was very smooth when he wasn't in those difficult situations, and you can see it here in qualifying. He may not be the fastest driver today in qualifying, but he's definitely going to be one of the smoothest here as he makes his way into turn 10. Nice and key on the throttle there as he makes his way on the exit, and now through 11 and up into the right hander of 12 very shortly. A little bit of traffic ahead of him as we do get a slight disconnect there in terms of latency, so apologies for that if anybody caught that in their eyesight. It will not continually happen, unlike the technical issues we have seen previously, as he makes his way now down towards what is turns 16. Very soon he's going to come charging on through 13, 14 and up into 15. He comes very shortly as he goes through 14 right now, the right into left combination here, and as he comes through 15, it is the case he builds up towards what is turn 16, goes through the right hander, and as he exits the corner at this point, it is now the long charge down Allman here as he continues to build up towards the lap. We're going to have some laps come in before we're going to see Albanese's lap coming, I think, unless it's the case that he is the first and that traffic ahead of him is on a warm-up lap right now. But as he makes his way into the final corner here, looking for his brake marker, he comes in very aggressive on the speed and on the brakes as he trails his way through. He keeps it nice and tight, a little bit too tight perhaps not getting the nose round as early as he would like. A bit of understeer there, and that may have cost him some time, but he's going to come across that timeline to complete our opening qualifying lap, a 2:01.1. Not a bad lap, all things considered. The best laps we did see in the Apex Racing Academy lobby were 1:59s. 1:59.2 was the fastest lap we saw in race trim. Qualifying, it was a 1:59.3, and already more times coming in here as we can see Maury setting a 2:05. A very strong lap there from Maury, the pro driver, as he goes for a little bit of rallycross and gets it out of condition there and takes some of the braking cones out with him, as that's very unfortunate. We've had a BMW go straight into him there, and Maury losing control of the car. And the number 91 car of Gareth Williams also mating calls with the Porsches. It went very wrong there, and the two of them came together quite nastily. But as they both jump back to the pits right now, we can see Stefan Vessels here, the AM driver, making his way around, and currently after the opening round of qualifying laps, as they all come in, P4 the AM driver, and the closest man to him right now is Mark Baker, who's the best part of 2.5 tenths down. And here is Baker in the Ferrari. Now, if you're wondering about the colours that Mark's running, for those unaware, Mark does race in real world. I believe he races as part of, and he'll probably correct me if I'm wrong here, he races as part of the Rover MG series. And if you do check him out on his official web pages, it is the case that his car runs this exact same style of livery as the car he's running here in iRacing, the Ferrari 488. Of course, he's racing in one of the Rovers in the real world, but it's the case he's taken his real world livery and brought it to the virtual racetrack. So that's why Baker runs this livery. It may not be the most fetching compared to some of the others here, but it's quite quaint and quite nice. And indeed, Baker, a wonderful chap himself, and if you do want to get in touch with him, I'm sure he'd be happy to tell you more about his real world racing experience. And a good number of our drivers in the two lobbies, of course, real world racers. We've got some quite infamous faces, and we can see Baker right now making his way through the right into left combination here of 14-15 as he comes roaring down towards 16. As he comes on through, we look a bit further down our order right now, and we can see in terms of qualifying, that's Stuart P. Taylor down in P24 as it currently stands, but albeit he's yet to actually put in a lap time here, as we can see it's the case that Baker pulling off the line there and letting drivers on through it, and Taylor's going to come through to do his first lap as he comes charging on through the right hander here of 17. Now, rather wide of that initial apex, but this is quite a smooth line, and he's got back on the power quite well. Not the tightest line he could have had, but it's definitely worked out here for what is Taylor. And as he crosses the line, what's this going to be? As he puts the lap in, we're just waiting for our time screen to start taking. In fact, I do not think that lap has been counted. I think it's the case that that lap has been essentially a track limit invalidation, so as a result, he's going to have to go again. As meanwhile, one of our newcomers to tonight, and that is Kelly Koch, as he makes his way through. The Ignium Motorsport driver here, coming through the left-hander as he comes charging on through. Oh, goodness me, there's been a major incident ahead, and it does look as though Koch has been, well, it's a case that Kelly has been collected in that, as that looks to be Nigel Stock, and that Ford GT, well, it's the case that whilst it's P15 in the Pro, P13 in the Pro class and P15 overall right now, it's not going anywhere for some time. All the damage it has just picked up. As we see Alistair Kirk, meanwhile, charging down towards the final corner here as he makes his way on down towards what is the right-hander of 17, moving out the way for the BMW coming on through. As we see Paul Scott has come across the line here, and of course Paul Scott, our winner in the feature race last time out of Daytona, and right now P13 overall. That's P11 in class as he makes his way through 1 and now up towards 3. Half the qualifying session remaining here, and it is the case, all the lap times still coming in, but our fastest lap right now held by Dan Murray in the Porsche 911 here as he makes his way out of turn 7 and through 8 and up towards 9 he comes. And as he comes charging through 9 and up into 10, it is looking as though Maury has got a small advantage over Paul Walton. But if anything can happen, it will be the case that the RD Simsport driver of Paul Walton will find a way to get back. We saw how strong Walton was over the course of Daytona, and it was not just through the slipstream. Walton was perhaps the one driver that you really needed to keep your eye out for. It didn't go his way in the second race in particular, but Walton, a very fast driver, and really worked hard in the sprint in particular to make that win count. And now we're waiting to see what he can do here as he makes his way through the final right-hander. Is he going to be able to beat Maury? Well, right now he has improved in the latter half of the lap. Can he make this a provisional pole position? He crosses the line. It's a 2-minute flat point, 5:06 there, and he is only half a tenth faster than Maury. But whether it's half a tenth or a single thousandth, it all counts as he goes around onto another lap here with approximately what is just over 6 minutes of this qualifying session left to go. Meanwhile, a bit further back there, you can see Matthew Prouting coming through the first corner here. And Prouting right now P10 overall in the Pro class. He's P8 in this qualifying session, and Prouting, one of those drivers who we expect will come alive as the season pushes onwards. He's a fast driver. It's not to be put past him right now. We saw that in season 1, how Prouting, when he did join, started off a little bit timidly in terms of his overall pace, but his performances really did shine through as time went on towards the end of the season. And can Prouting spring a surprise today as he makes his way down towards the hairpin? Well, that is the big question that we'll be asking indeed of many drivers. But meanwhile, looking further out, we can see also got Paul Colburn here making his way, the AM driver, through turn number 3 here in the BMW M4, and a couple of new faces today who we didn't see last time out. We've got new drivers joining on a weekly basis at the moment, or drivers who were not able to take part in the season opener. They'll be appearing tonight, so we have got some faces that you may not have seen previously and be thinking, well, who on earth is that? Well, it is the case. You're going to be seeing them tonight, and you'll be asking those questions as we are just waiting right now for more times to come in. But Coburn right now down in P38, but he is on an outlap. His best time so far registered is a 2:06, and that is well off the... Well, no, that's not his best lap. It is his best lap. Indeed, it's a 2:06.3 there as he makes his way down towards turn number 10. And he does have the Castrol Ferrari ahead of him. But meanwhile, going from a Castrol Ferrari here to a Ferrari running the standard Tifosi colours as he makes his way through the left-hander here. It is Jack Wyborn who running around with the Rayburn liveried Ferrari there based on the Formula 1 car as he comes charging through 1 up into 3. We're going to just follow him through for this lap from the exterior cameras here. And Wyborn, a very fast driver in his own right in the AM class for this season as he makes his way through turn number 5 and looking quite composed here, balancing the Ferrari, but a little bit deep there into turn 5. And by going deep early on that apex, you could see as he tried to get on the power of the car, understeered wide. There's not enough width for you to be able to power through and try to use power through understeer there at turn 5. And that's the big challenge at Sebring. A lot of these corners, whilst when we're looking at the camera, they look tight. When you're in the actual car itself and racing around here, you make one mistake and a corner which is already very tight in terms of the width you have to play with. I mean, they always say when you're racing with a real world or sim world, it is the case you should use the full width of the track, and indeed my trainer has told me that many times, but it really is the case around here. You make one tiny mistake, then the amount of width available for you to abuse of the circuit reduces dramatically, and that's going to catch drivers out. It's caught Wyborn out already at turn number 5, and what can he do as he now tries to recover this lap? More time still coming in as Walton has come out of the pits. He's just put on a fresh set from what I'm hearing in my ear right now from our marshals down towards the pit lane, but as we can see Wyborn coming on through right now, he has got the slowest time in the session if you do not count Tom Delaney, who's also out on the circuit right now, who's yet to put in a lap time from what we understand. Can Wyborn find his way up the field, or will it be the case it's a bridge too far at this point as we check in with you guys and girls in the chat here, and we can see it is the case that we do have a number of people talking about the races from the past, as we say hello to Titan Taylor there, saying good evening guys, where is TGC Racing? Well, we are going to find you some of the TGC guys out on the circuit very shortly, but just following Wyborn to the end of his lap right now, as we do say hello to Mark Sykes in the Facebook chat, Craig Pearce in the Twitch chat. We've also got Matt Emmons in the Facebook chat, Boy Pecco in the YouTube chat there, and as we can see right now, it is the case. He crosses the line, Wyborn, and indeed, well, I should actually say right now, as Wyborn crosses, that is not an improvement. In fact, he's had to come off that lap by the looks of things, but as he makes his way around right now, we continue to look around the circuit, and I believe it is the situation right now as Paul Scott comes around. I should confirm to you, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, something which slipped my mind initially. We will not be seeing Josh Wiggins out on circuit today, and Josh Wiggins, our driver who did not pick up a win in either of the races at Daytona, he's not available. He's away at this point in time, but he will be returning as of round 3, so this will effectively act as his single drop score in the series. All other drivers get one drop score, and that is what he'll have to bear on his shoulders, not being able to take part in Sebring. As we see Nathan J. Scott here making his way down into left-hander here, and as he comes through turn number 1, coming and charging through, gets the rear end very wrong there, and the rear end just completely releasing and into the wall. And that is very unfortunate for Scott, who now jumps back to the pit lane and looks to go again. But meanwhile, going from him to another one of our drivers making their way on through, we can see here we do have Kirk coming on through, Alistair Kirk, as he makes his way through the left-hander in the Lamborghini Huracan in P12 right now. And as he comes through, it is the situation right now. Kirk just trying to keep his nose down and push on, and keep his head down as well. He'll be keeping everything down right now to try and get the best possible lap with 2 minutes of this qualifying session to go. As we can see, most of our drivers are making their way on around, and we look a little bit further up in the chat right now, and I believe there are some spoilers in the Facebook chat, but I'm not going to say anything about it. As we can see, it's the case that Sam Holman, they're just putting in some messages, but that's fair enough. And indeed, I appreciate some of the guys tuning in tonight will be the racers who took part, so if they do want to talk about it, we're not going to try and look too closely at the chat, because I don't actually know, and I should point out, I do not know how this plays out. So as a result, for me, this is effectively live right now, and that's why I'm bringing it to you tonight, because it is the case these guys deserve their time of day in the spotlight. But with 1.5 minutes to go now, it is the case that with Kirk coming on through, he's currently P12 overall, P10 in class. We look up to Stefan Vessels, who really is setting the timing screens I like here. He's not the fastest, but he's matching Dan Morey's lap right now. If you think that's a glitch on your timing screen there on the top left corner of your screen, which says he's on a lap that is even with Dan Morey, I can confirm for you, ladies and gentlemen, he is not a glitch. That means he is matching Morey down to 10 thousandths of a second right now. That is how strong our Ram driver here, our rookie, is coming on. And this really does remind me of situations, if many of you remember all the way back to, if I remember the year that Lewis Hamilton started his Formula 1 career with McLaren Mercedes, it really is ringing bells like that here. But of course, in Formula 1, they didn't have driver classes, whether it's Pro or Am, but it is the case that Vessels right now does really seem to be putting in the lap times out of nowhere as he makes his way now onto what is effectively his final lap. He's halfway through it already. Can he improve here? I mean, he's already provisional pole within his class by a major margin over Baker right now, who has put the car in the pits. So Mark Baker will not be taking part anymore in this qualifying session. I think Vessels has got this done here in terms of provisional pole into pole in the Am class, but just how high does he want to raise the bar around him? And indeed, I think a lot of questions, as we can see, an Audi there going very wide in the run down into 15, and as a result, they're just going to be taken to the escape road there, and I believe as Dan Morey takes provisional pole back, and that is a 2-minute point 3. Can Walton respond here? Walton cannot respond as he crossed just behind. A 2-minute point 4 for Walton, so they both improved, but Morey takes that provisional pole for the time being. Now, will we see anybody else put in a lap that's able to match those two? I don't think it's going to be the case as we see Vessels come on through the final corner. And as he comes through, he's going to go into the pit. So he is going to park up and say, that's enough, I've done my bit. As we still see some drivers making their way around on their final laps here. And I think Gareth Williams is going to be our final driver to complete their qualifying lap. We've got only a limited number coming on through. As meanwhile, Elwin Sykes here, the South African, makes his way out the final corner. As he comes across that timeline, can Elwin find a way to improve? He crosses, he does improve to a 202.6, but it's not enough to move him up from P26. Instead, stuck there in what is P9 in class, P26 overall. More drivers still making their way around on the circuit. I believe the next driver to cross that timing line will be Matthew Proughton as he makes his way in the long run down the Allman Straight here. Continues to charge him down. And Proughton right now, P9 in class, P11 overall. This isn't ideal for Proughton in terms of where he's going to be starting. He'll find himself actually right in the thick of it in the run down towards turn 1 as he makes his way through the final corner here. And as he comes through that right-hander, a rather fetching livery on that BMW he make it a fetching lap to contend. And as he comes all the way across that line, I don't think it's going to be enough here from Proutin. No, it's not an improvement. So Proutin does not improve. What about Alistair Kirk behind? Meanwhile, as he comes through the right-hander here, Kirk coming across that line very shortly. Will he be able to improve? He's been down in all the mini sectors so far. I don't think it's going to happen here. He does not improve. And what about Stuart Taylor? Stuart Taylor across that line. He does not improve either. So it is Dan Murray who takes pole position overall and in the Pro class, and Stefan Wessels once again taking pole position in the AM class. And what a brilliant pair of laps by the two pole sitters in the end. And now we get ready to go racing for 15 minutes in the sprint race. But right now, in terms of the conditions and also in terms of those qualifying laps, you'd have to think that Wessels can keep this one together. He should be once again on course for what may not necessarily be an easy win, but a much more comfortable opportunity at a win here, as we do see the two TGC drivers. I believe these guys are from Team TGC, unless I'm mistaken, making their way around in formation right now and making up for a little bit of a photo opportunity here, Taylor and Kirk, as they switch places around and have a little bit of fun, just waiting for this qualifying session to end. Indeed, the TGC racing drivers there, as it's validated by the logo on the side of the car. And as we see Taylor just backing off a little bit here, is the case. They're trying to go for that photo opportunity, and who would blame them as they make their way on through. But as they make their way around right now, we can see Katie Eames in the Facebook chat saying, spoiler alert, there's likely to be a good race. We've got LMR Ignium Motorsport saying, go Ignium as well. And now we make our way in preparation for the sprint race here. We should get the transition, and there it is, ladies and gentlemen. We get the transition to the sprint race, and our grid will now start to form as we see all of our drivers phasing into existence here as they ready up on the grid. And it will be the case that we will be going racing very shortly. In approximately 2 minutes, we'll be getting underway. So it's just a good time to take a look at the grid. So taking a look at that grid then, as we can see Dan Murray and Walton lining up on pole position, on the front row I should say, with Murray in pole position with 2 minute point free. And in the end, the two of them being separated by only a tenth of a second. Wessels in the AM class there, taking pole position in the AM class in P3. Alongside him is Gareth Williams in P4. And then you've got Kosh Kelly and Stefan Albanese on the third row. Mark Baker, our second AM driver there in P7, the Team Tetra Rouge driver, and alongside him Michael Seal. And you've then got Lamet Wedder and Dory line up on the fifth row. Alistair Kirk and Prouting on what is the sixth row. And as we continue to look down the field right now, seventh row consisting of Stock and Scott. Then we have got Scott and Neve on the eighth row there. That's Nathan J. Scott rather than Paul Scott. Paul Scott just ahead of him. Darren Doherty and Paul Williams lining up on row number 9. Row 10 consisting of Luke Hobson and Gareth Mills. Row 11, Stuart P. Taylor and Tom Delaney. Row 12, Mark Sykes and Sam Holman. And as we continue to look down those standings, we're coming towards the end of them right now. It is the case. We've got Davide Falvo and Elwin Sykes line up on the 13th row, Paul Coburn and Liam Tack on the 14th row, Jack Wyborn and Chris Keenan on row number 15, and on the final row by himself, Mark Jardine, line up P31. As we take another look back to the grid right now, and we do clear all that grid information out the way for you, and now we just wait to get racing. Indeed, everybody will be feeling that itch, none more so than Maury, starting there on the pole position, and he will be looking to get the best possible start he can, as all 31 of our drivers look to go racing very shortly here. And we saw in the Apex Racing Academy last night how close it was in the rundown towards turn 1 in the sprint race. We had a 5-wide situation where Billy Fletcher gained 4 places by simply being brave to make the move. Will we see something similar here today as they all pull off the line to go away for the sprint race? And it will be Dan Murray who takes us around. It's a short run around to the line, so we'll now wait for Murray to take us to the green. And as they make their way out the final corner, Maury's gone very early by comparison with everyone else, and you can see already as they come charging down towards turn 1. Walton losing out massively in all of this, and Stefan Wessels, meanwhile, able to stay there in P3, but you can see Gareth Williams trying to close up as they go charging on in. Meanwhile, a little bit further back, we've got Mark Baker, who's dropped down positions here, as we can see the Audi going around the outside here, Jamie Dory, as they all make their way charging up towards turn 3. We've got the flash of lights there from one of the TGC cars, that's Alistair Kirk, as they come all down into turn number 3. A bit further back, meanwhile, meanwhile, we do have Stuart Taylor making a move on the inside here while the Ferraris. That's Paul Williams who he's made the pass on as he now makes his way into the left-hander of turn number 5. Oh, goodness me, and I think Williams has been involved in a bit of a knock there. Yep, he has indeed, Paul Williams, as they make the way, and we've got a couple of cars all over the place right now. Chris Keenan involved in that incident as well, and Keenan, I think, just bringing the car back together, as meanwhile we look back up towards our leaders right now as they come on through the hairpin and go charging up towards turn number 10, and as they make their way up towards 10 right now, you'd have to say that Maury holding very well up front, as a little bit further down we can see it's the situation right now as all of our drivers come Constantine up into turn 10. No real changes at this point, although I say that Lambert Wedder giving a little bit of tap on the back of Sil there as he makes his way through turn at number 11. I think trying to get the message through to Sil, if you'd politely get a move on please, good sir, as they make their way down in towards Tower Corner for the first time of asking, and as they come through the right hander here, we look a little bit further up front, we can see Stefan Vessels has got pressure building in the form of Gaz Williams here as he comes through that left hander, but as they make their way completely flat out into the braking zone, I think it's going to be a case that Gareth Williams are looking for the move, he can't quite find it as they make their way around here through in towards Le Mans Corner and further back. It's the situation where Stuart Taylor here making his way, he's trying to charge after Darren Doherty, the AM driver ahead of him, because he's in the way of Neve, and Neve being the Castrol Racing Ferrari just ahead, as meanwhile a little bit further back I'm hearing that Holman here has had a little bit of a drop down the order. Sam Holman lost out another position to Gareth Mills, but meanwhile as these guys make their way up towards the final corner, and Holman there moving off the racing line probably to burn a slowdown, we can see our leaders making their way out the final corner with 2 minutes complete already. This is the end of the open lap, and as it's after one lap it is Dan Murray leading by the best part of what is only 5/10 of a second and closing from Paul Walton in P2, followed by Stefan Vessels in P3 holding on to the AM lead. Then it's Gareth Williams P4, Kosh Kelly in P5, Stefan Albanese in P6 here, but you can see Albanese having to defend versus Sil, still trying to go for the move around the outside to inside here as they make their way through turn number 1 and head up towards turn 3. Now will Sil have the over momentum here? Will he try to get it done? No, he backs off here and waits for another day. The Briton stays in P7, Lambert Wedder in P8, followed by Jamie Dorey in P9. I think Silver's got it very wrong on the corner and tries to stop the car there, and he just about keeps it together, does the Ignium Motorsport driver, as he now makes his way under momentum once again. But I think Sil just being up on the curb, and as a result, as he came out 4 into 5, he completely lost it as he drops down the order like a stone. And in fact, there is something wrong with that car. I think part of the suspension has, indeed, the suspension has collapsed, and Sil is out of this race. Oh, he's going back to the pits, but meanwhile, looking back further up the order, we're still having that moment. We can see here how Nathan Scott now trying to make the move on Paul Scott. The two Scotts going toe-to-toe here for position in the Pro Class, and this is the battle for what is P12 as they make their way up in towards the braking zone of turn 10, and it looks as though Paul Scott's still holding on for the time being, and we know how tricky Scott can be, Paul Scott, in terms of defending versus the other drivers. We saw that at Daytona. Can Paul Scott hold on here as they make their way up into turn 13, where it does look as though he can for right now as we ride on board here with the pull stroke, and you can see the bounce there as they transition the road surface through Tower Corner, and that's the thing that the TGC racing driver will feel in that Porsche. He'll feel the bounce of the road surface as they make their way up into 14. It's going to be a battle on the brakes here, but he can't quite find all the way alongside there, can Nathan Scott, as they make their way into Le Mans Corner once again, and he just has to now bide his time. We know how strong that BMW is down the straights compared to the other cars around it, if it's able to get a toe and get a very nice long run here, but you can see how Nathan Scott trying to hold as close as he possibly can as they come roaring up towards turn at number 17. Will he look for the potential move here? Well, you can see just up ahead of them how Stott versus Baker, and Stott goes through on the inside here versus the AM driver of Baker, but meanwhile further back it's the case that Paul Scott goes defensive into the final corner. This is going to cost him massive momentum in the run down towards turn at number 1 once again as they come around to complete lap number 2 and go on to lap 3. Now we can see Baker lifting off considerably here and letting a lot of drivers on through before racing under his own momentum, and Darren Doherty actually comes through as well, as meanwhile Paul Scott goes on the wide to inside here, and you can see Nathan Scott trying to hold that inside line to try and force a move, but he's not going to be able to intimidate Paul Scott as they make their way through. And further back there we have got a BMW, well, it's a Porsche that's sideways. That's Gareth Mills, who's had a bit of a moment into turn number 1, and now he has to go and rejoin the proceedings from very far back down the order. But meanwhile, whilst he's had a moment, I can tell you that our race leader of Maury still holding position for the time being in the lead, but he does have Walton over the back of him here as they make their way through 8 and up towards 9 and 10, and there's no change so far. But I can also say that Paul Walton on that last lap has set the fastest lap so far. It was a 10th faster than his adversary ahead of him, and Walton, the RD Simsport machine, setting a 2-minute flat point 2, a very strong lap and matching what is effectively our pole lap in qualifying already, and then going some to push even further beyond. But as we move from these guys to looking further down the order, it is the case that right now we can see that Paul Williams, after seeing the incidents ahead of him, the pro driver also being involved in that incident on lap number 1 at turns 4 and 5, which saw him go for a bit of a rallycross line off the circuit as he makes his way up into turn number 10 right now. It looks as though Williams just carrying on and trying to nurse his Ferrari home, but he will be battling amongst his amateur drivers rather than the pros within his own class right now, and I think that will be something he'll enjoy the experience and learn where he can overtake, but this is not what he would have wanted. But meanwhile, a bit further out the road, you can see that Darren Doherty here trying to hold off Mark Baker after getting the move done versus Mark Baker. It's the case, the Altitude Esports driver versus the Tetra Racing driver as they make their way through 16 and head down towards West Sunset Corner, and I'm hearing that Stefan Vessels has found his way past Gareth Williams has found his way past Stefan Vessels, but as they all make their way up towards what is the final corner right now, you can see it's the case that Nathan Scott versus Paul Scott. Nathan Scott on the inside, but Paul Scott goes late on the brakes on the outside here. Now, which one of the two will emerge the leader coming out of the corner? Well, I think Paul Scott's got it very wrong and gone wide, and as a result, this is going to open up the opportunity for James Neve to come through on the inside here as they make their way down towards turn number 1. Once again, all three drivers battling for position, and Paul Scott has lost out massively as they make their way into the opening corner here, but he's able to hold off Neve, but Neve looking for it as meanwhile ahead we can see Jamie Dory here battling with Albanese and Wedder has just been passed by Dory as they make their way into turn number 5, and you see Albanese here really struggling for pace as he comes through the opening sector and now makes his way down towards turn number 7 in the long charge here as we ride on board the gearbox of Albanese, the Italian doing well at this point in time, but I think at the same time struggling a little bit for overall speed as we can see Dory looking around the outside here as we can see on the inside Wedder making a move there from quite far back, but capitalised on the fact that Dory left the door open, and as a result Jamie Dory loses a place to Barracuda with Next Gen Racing driver, and the Team Racing Netherlands driver Lambert Wedder moves up to P7. That's P6 in class as they now make their way down towards turn 10, and whilst Albanese's not fast, you can tell he is a rolling roadblock here and nobody wants to be behind him because he is holding everybody up, and you can see as a result Wedder and Dory are going to come back together very soon in the run up towards Tower Corner as they come through 12 and into 13. Dory on the outside, Wedder on the inside here, and as they make their way in, Prouting giving a little bit of a tap to the back of Dory, and Dory as a result being propelled round as behind you can see Nigel Stock, who's got a face full of this action as we ride on board. And the Ford GT Prouting on the inside here, that'll be the outside for 14 as they make the way, and I think Wedder's going to simply regain the position, but having to brake so close to the apex, he goes very deep there and almost loses it but keeps it together, and Nigel Stock at this point will be thinking to himself, okay boys, just keep on fighting, take one other out the way and I can turn this P10 into a potential P7 without having to put in any effort. But it looks like they're all settling down once again right now as they make their way down the long straight here towards turn number 17, and you've seen the Ford GT right now, Stock just waiting for that opportunity here as he closes up under, brake into the back of Prouting, and as they make their way through the right hand here, Stock feeling that bounce. You can see the suspension just being rocked about here as he makes his way through the corner and onto another lap very shortly as we look back to the exterior cameras right now, and it's the case Dory starting to make the breakaway. It's Lambert Wedder now who really is the one blocking everybody else up or holding everyone else up and trying to hold them at bay as they come through the left-hander of one once again. Half the race complete. We now got 7 minutes remaining. Hold up, we've got a Ferrari there parked on the corner. I think that's a back marker, and it's a very much that's Vessels, that's Stefan Vessels, who's literally had it all go wrong, and whilst we would be able to bring it back to you, we can see another Ferrari getting it wrong. That's Wyborn there, but Stefan Vessels drops down to P13 as the South African. We can't go back and take a look at what happened, unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, although we would love to, but Vessels once again involved in an incident in the sprint race, and whilst he's still holding on to lead of the AM class, it is the case now Tom Delaney, who you can see behind here, is chasing after him the SVP MR machine as he makes his way in to turn number 7, and Delaney will be delighted to see Vessels much closer now compared to where he was previously, and that will be a sight for sore eyes as they make their way around on circuit. But as they come on through here through the left-hander and up into turn 10, it does look as though that Vessels is able to get back under his own momentum as further down the order I can see that Gareth Mills right now is closing up to the back, and Darrell Doherty here as they make their way in the run up towards 10, and as they come charging on through 8 and 9, it is the case that Gareth Mills has got the pressure of Baker behind him, and he's now between Baker and Doherty, and I'm hearing in my ear that there was an incident between Doherty and Baker earlier on in the race, the two of them going off circuit and Gareth Mills inserting himself between the two of them, and as a result as they make their way now for 11 and into 12, it's the case the South African's got a face full of Baker behind him as he looks to the braking zone here, and going into Tower Corner, the Ferrari man cannot find a way through, as meanwhile a little bit further up the road I'm hearing that Nigel Stock has got himself past what is Paul Scott and is now going pursuing after Nathan Scott and also Prouting here. And speaking of have Proughton. Well, Proughton has got the Porsche driver Nathan Scott all over the back of him as they make their way through the right-hander of 17 once again here. 5 minutes remaining in this race, and as they come on through right now, we can see the RP Motorsports driver, the Pro driver in the team of Matthew Proughton here, as he makes his way down towards turn 1. He's looking at Lambert Wedder here, he's looking for that opportunity, but he can't find it. And further back, Paul Scott here going defensive versus Neve, and Neve's going to try and go all the way around here. You can do it into turn 1. It's just a case you've got to be brave, and it looks as though the Next Gen Racing BMW of Scott is trying to defend, but he can't hold on. And James Neve up into P11. That is P11 overall and in class as he makes his way now around through turns 4 and into 5. But meanwhile, looking a bit further down the order, I can tell you that Mark Baker all over the back of Gareth Mills right now, and this is the battle for P22 overall as they make their way into turn 1. Mills on the outside there, just trying to turn in, but he finds Baker on his inside and has to back off the steering lock, and great respect shown between the two of them as they make their way through 2 and up into 3. And I think Mills in the end relinquishing the position 9, that Baker's got a bit more under the hood in terms of overall pace by comparison as they make their way on through the first third of the corners. And we can see meanwhile Dan Morey still leading with 4 minutes remaining, just under 4 minutes remaining plus the lap they finish on, and it's the case that Walton not closing up right now. But to be fair to Walton, does he really need to take the win aggressively in this sprint race? Of course, every point's valuable, but right now I think him just being here alongside Morey or chasing after Morey is enough, and if he picks up a P2, I think he'll settle for that and prepare himself for the feature race where he can try to look to come through the order once again, and he'll have one less place to gain on the opening lap. As meanwhile, as they make their way around into turn 16, I can tell you that further down the order, Jamie Dory right now is in a little bit of a sandwich here, a bit of a sandwich between a BMW and another BMW, and it is the case that the M4 sandwich has an Audi for its filling, and as they come through turn 16 and go charging down towards 17, you can see on the exit there how Albanese having such a poor exit out of 16 compared to Dory, but this is where the Audi really suffers compared to the M4. It's the case it hasn't got the straight line speed, and as they come charging down towards 17, Dory's got all the momentum he can get as he tries to look round the outside to inside, but he goes very deep here, and now he starts to build that return to the inside line, but it's too deep to be able to gain as he makes his way down towards turn number 1. And as a result, now we can see that Lambert Wedder and Matthew Proughton all closing up as they make their way in the long charge down towards the first corner. And as they come in here, Dory's going to try and go all the way round versus Albanese, but he can't find it as we see Proughton defending versus Nathan Scott in the rearview picture. And as they come on through here, it's the situation where all of our drivers started to look for those moves, and Albanese with not enough momentum, he goes deep on the brakes here, does Albanese, and he tries to hold on as we see Proughton also trying to fight here with what is Scott. And as they come through the corners, you can see Dory not able to gain, but it's the case that Nathan Scott able to pick up a position. As you can see, Jamie Dory flashing his lights there, definitely trying to now put off Stefan Albanese, but the Italian just able to hold on no matter what you throw at him here. And it is the case they come into the braking zone. Lambert Wedder going for a very late break and almost tapping the back there of Albanese as they come through. He's made it work to an extent as he's caught Jamie Dory by surprise, and Lambert Wedder with the late break into turn 7 has been able to get the position, but for how long? Until they come up towards turn 10. And you can see here Jamie Dory trying to go around the outside as Albanese boxes in Wedder into the hairpin style corner, and as they make their way through the right hander, it is Dory back ahead. These guys fighting relentlessly here as if their lives depended on it as they make their way through 12 and up into 13, and Dory not giving up as he makes his way through Tower Corner. He wants that P5, but he's got to be more inventive and finding a way past the tricky Italian as they make their way down towards turn number 14 and 15, and Dory's going to try and go outside to inside here. I think this may be it as he makes his way, and he's got himself in the middle of the road. He'll be able to block Albanese, and Dory, unless he gets it wrong, coming out of 16, leaves himself vulnerable down the Allman Straight. Oh, goodness me, and Wedder there, getting it a little bit wrong. The car snapping on the entry into turn 16 under braking, but he's kept it together. But look at the queue of cars here that's formed as a result. We've got so many cars trying to look for moves here, as you can see in the middle of all this. Nigel Stock in the Ford GT, which looks so out of place given all the German machinery around it. He's trying to come on through as we can see Albanese defends versus Vedder, and then Nigel Stock, he's got past Proughton and is now holding on to P8 with Proughton and Nathan Scott battling one another and getting caught up in all of this as they all go on to the final lap right now. But you'd have to say, whilst the battle for the lead could have been interesting, this is absolutely intense as Albanese now defends versus Wedder. Wedder's going to be on the inside here as they come down to turn 1, and as he tries to go all the way around the outside and squeeze Wedder onto a tight line, you can see as they come down towards turn 3, they're still side by side as Proughton battling with Nigel Stock here, and Albanese is going to try to
go around the outside to inside into 4. He's done it, and he cuts back across the front in the end, as we can see Proutin versus Stock, and the Ford GT gets contact with the BMW and is knocked up onto the grass as he now returns under his own momentum, but he is out of that battle, and I think he might have a word to the stewards about that one. It was very tight through there, so I can imagine it may be considered a racing incident, but that's why we're a commentator, not a steward. I can't imagine what they're going to have to go through. As we can see here, Scott parking it on the apex of the corner as he makes his way on through turn number 7 and getting ahead of Prouting and Neve as they make the way now down towards turn number 10. And Albanese once again here, and to defend versus winning, you can see just how much time Widder has lost to Dory already through this battling as they go through the corner. A little bit of contact there. Albanese just giving Widder a tiny tap wide to say, okay, you can take the width of the circuit if you like. And as they make their way through the corners here, they come down towards what is turn number 30 into Tower Corner, and Prouting holding off Neve for the time being, as meanwhile our race leaders are now in the long run down towards the final corner here. It's Maury versus Walton as they come charging on down towards turn 17, whilst Walton has constantly been there. I think Maury is just safe right now. He's been able to keep enough of a gap as the Altitude Esports driver. They come into the final corner under braking, and as they make their way on through, it looks like that gap is closing up a little bit here, but there's not enough time of day, and it will be Dan Maury who is your winner overall and the winner in the pro class in the sprint race at Sebring, ahead of Paul Walton. And then it will be Gareth Williams who comes home in P3 ahead of Kosh Kelly in P4, and then Jamie Dory, well, with everything that has happened here, he's been able to bring home a P5 when it's all said and done as he comes across that timeline. And Dory with a massive defence, and Albanese in the end coming home in P6 ahead of Nathan Scott, Lambert Wedder, Matthew Prouting just alongside James Lee, Paul Scott, and Stefan Vessels has crossed the line as your winner in the AM class. So you can see the red Ferrari there from South Africa doing a fantastic job to pick up his first win, and it's Nigel Stott P13, then Tom Delaney in the end has crossed the line in what is P14 overall. That's P2 in the AM class, Sam Holman, and then Stuart Taylor, followed by Paul Williams, Alistair Kirk, and then in P19 overall, but P3 in class, it's Davide Favo here as he comes through the final corner and onto another lap. And meanwhile, you can see Darren Doherty here in P4, Gareth Mills P5, and then Mark Baker P6 in the AM class, followed by Paul Colburn. Then it's Mark Sykes ahead of his brother, well, I believe it's his brother Elwyn Sykes, although I'm not 100% sure on the family relationship there, so don't quote me on that one, folks. I may be a little bit wrong, but Elwyn Sykes in P9 in class, and then Luke Hobson in P10 in the AM class, P26 overall. But my goodness, as Hobson makes his way on through the final corner here, and we will just see, well, he's not going to quite, he does finish this one, in fact a little bit of a connectivity issue there as he comes to that timeline. It has been a very intense sprint race, and well, we will be right back very shortly, ladies and gentlemen, with our post-race interviews. You won't want to miss them.
Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, well, I'm pleased to say that we've been able to secure some of the time of Stefan Wessels, our winner in the AM class, and we will, within the next brief moment, be bringing him into the interview room. But what a fantastic race, and particularly that battle for P5 overall between a multitude of pro class drivers. You couldn't ask for it any tighter. But one driver will be very curious as to what exactly happened to see him drop down the order, but not experience what happened at Daytona, is our winner, Stefan Wessels. Let's get him in here. Hello, Stefan, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, loud and clear.
Stefan, congratulations on your first win in the series, and indeed I think one of your very first wins in iRacing. How's it feel to have taken the win in the sprint race at Sebring?
It was good. It was an interesting race. I qualified quite well, but I don't want to mess up the pro guys' race, so it was a bit tricky to just race with them and not allow them to race as well. So when when he was on my inside, I just let him go, and then I settled in for a nice position. But as you could see in the stream, I lost a good couple of places in one spot, and that was unfortunately due to a back marker coming out of the pits and changing his line under braking in going into turn 3. So, but yeah, I can't believe I actually won this race, because I'm sure when I was watching there was a AM guy ahead of me. In any case, yeah, I was very happy with my driving. So yeah.
Well, it did look as on our timing screens as though you were our winner, unless I'm very much mistaken. So there may have been a disconnection or some description, but still, playing it as it is, I do have to ask that with regards to that moment between yourself and the back marker, when the contact happened, did you think to yourself, oh no, it's Daytona all over again? Because you're in a similar situation in Daytona. You were out front and it all went wrong.
Yeah, there was luckily no contact. I just had to take avoiding action because he braked about 50 meters before the normal braking spot. So I had to just get out of the way, and yeah, it meant I spun out, and then I had to wait for the queue to come past before I could get back on track. So luckily no damage. And yes, Daytona did flash through my mind, definitely.
Very true. And now, whilst it did happen in the past, of course, what was going through your mind in the build-up to the feature race, given that you'd be starting quite far back?
Just keep it clean, eh? Yeah, the feature. I'm not going to spoil anything, but yeah, keep an eye on it. Feature race was good to a point. But yeah, my aim was just to keep it clean. Obviously, try and gain as many positions as possible. And again, in this difficult situation where you're racing with the pro guys, but you don't want to impede in the race, but at the same time, you don't want to be lifting up half a second a lap just to let people by. So it's a very interesting situation.
I can see where you're coming from. Well, we look forward to seeing how you get on in the feature race, but until then, congratulations on your inaugural win, and we look forward to seeing how you get on in the next one.
Cool, thanks, man. Well, hopefully chat to you soon again.
Indeed. Until then, all the best.
Cheers.
So hearing that from Stefan Wessels, very happy with that performance, but I think also just a little bit of a tired moment with regards to the back marker, and as he was saying, there were those situations whereby he was already having the challenge of letting the pros through, not to block them from racing and just cruise to that ending, but it happens. But the thing is, and this goes to show you the championship built material of Stefan Wessels, is the fact keeping his head down and not letting adversity get to him, and that's what it's all about, and we look forward to seeing what he gets up to in the feature race. But meanwhile, whilst we are waiting, I think it may be the case we're not going to be hearing from Dan Murray. We have put the call out to him to see if he can join us, but we are not hearing anything from him at this point in time. So what we're going to do, ladies and gentlemen, is we are going to start to prepare for the feature race. We will be back at approximately 5 to 9, so in just over 10 minutes with the feature race. But if we do catch Dan Murray in the meantime, we'll bring you that interview with him. But otherwise, don't go anywhere, because in approximately 10 minutes' time, we'll be coming back with the build-up to the 60-minute feature. You won't want to miss it. Well, great news, ladies and gentlemen. We have been able to secure a little bit of the pro race winner in the sprint race of Dan Mori. So let's hear from him and his experience in the sprint race. Hello, Dan. Can you hear me? Just testing again. Dan, are you there? Maybe having some slight technical issues here, ladies and gentlemen. Who wouldn't be without some technical issues? So we are just going to try and work with Dan to see if his microphone can come on through. Okay, it is the case that just some slight technical issues, so Dan's just going to do a quick investigation and see what he can fix. Okay, we're going to try again. Hello, Dan, can you hear me?
I can hear you now, yes.
Oh, brilliant. You're coming through loud and clear, Dan. So, thank you for joining us for a quick interview. Congratulations on your win in the sprint race at Sebring. How does it feel to have taken your first win in the championship?
Yes, thank you very much. Yeah, it's a lot of pressure off of my shoulders to get it done quite early. I was obviously going into this championship not knowing whether or not I should have been a pro, whether or not I should have been an AM. So to kind of get my win early on kind of settles my nerves down a lot.
Oh, well, you did it in fantastic style, starting off with a very close qualifying shootout between yourself and Paul Walton. In the end, you taking pole by a 10th. I do have to ask, was the pressure really starting to build in qualifying, or was it one of those situations, you know what, we'll leave it to the final hour because we know we've got this in the bag?
No, so the funny story is, on the stream, it actually showed that my first lap counted, but I had pretty much an off track every single lap up until my very last lap when I managed to grab pole. So I crossed the line knowing that this lap had to be the lap because I wasn't going to make it round for another one. So, but luckily enough, I did enough to get pole. So.
Well, goodness me, well, it worked out fantastic in the end, and really all in the last possible moment, but sometimes it's right down to the last moment when it does come. And then translating that into the race, we saw you go quite early on. Was that to try and catch the field out and make that early break?
Yeah, so I was speaking to one of my teammates who was racing in the Apex League before the race, and he was just like, just go halfway through the last corner and thank me later. So I just trusted him and I went for it, and luckily I had like a second lead going into turn one. But then I think I made like a slight mistake just out of the hairpin where I lost my lead, but then pretty much after that just kept the lead at about 7/10 of a second, and me and Paul managed to just drive away from third place, so pretty simple after that.
It did look nip and tuck between yourselves throughout the entirety of the race, but as you say, the gap staying pretty much stationary until the very end. With regards to that pressure and managing that gap, did you feel as though you were driving at the sort of maximum every time, or was it one of those situations where you sort of, you know what, keep it 90-95%, don't overdo it, and balance the car?
Yeah, I was kind of driving probably 95%, but I always had in the back of my mind that if Paul was going to make the move, that I wasn't going to fight it, because there's no point risking taking us both out or something when we can easily pretty much secure a 1-2 anyway. So I was pretty happy with a first or a second. I didn't want to get ourselves in trouble. So
a very sensible approach. And now looking ahead to the feature race, obviously no spoilers if you can, please. How are you feeling going into the feature race?
Anywhere forward was a bonus. So just trying to stay out of trouble and just pick up some good points, really, because obviously I had an accident in the sprint race at Daytona, so I lost a good chunk of points there. So my aim was just to literally take it easy, be patient, and just try and pick up as many points as I could.
Okay, well, thank you for sharing that, and thank you for joining us in the interview room. Congratulations on the win once again, and we look forward to seeing how you get on in the feature.
Cool, thank you, perfect.
So hearing there from Dan Murray, who very happy with his performance in the sprint race. And as he was saying there, that balance of running at a good amount of pace but not overdoing it, and also being wise to the fact that Paul Walton was there, and if the fight really kicked off, not costing each other those positions. And even if he'd come home in P2, he would have been happy with that second place and some good points on the board. And it'll be interesting to see how he tries to come through the field from the very back effectively in the feature. Now, in terms of jumping over to the feature, we will be jumping over to it very shortly, ladies and gentlemen. So just give us a brief minute to get things set up, and then we will be there. We'll be right back. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, and we are back then for the build-up to the feature race. We've got approximately 5 minutes to go before our drivers start to form the grid, and as we now get ready for what is expected to be a very challenging 60 minutes around the Sebring circuit. Of course, the big question that all of you will be asking is, what can we expect in this second race? Well, the thing is, we saw in the sprint race, and we saw this not just in the Coach Dave Academy lobby, which we're looking at, but of course the Apex Racing Academy lobby, is just how intense the fighting was over the course of the 15 minutes here, with overtaking opportunities being at quite the premium. Not easy to overtake at Sebring, or if you do, it's got to be made over multiple corners and with a lot of pace in the race distance. Now, the big question will be for all of our drivers, how can they put it together in these conditions, particularly when they've got 60 minutes to do, they've got a tight circuit, but you've got 4 times the time in which to make the passes. Plus, add to that the fact that you can have the opportunity to be able to squeeze on through at some point over the distance on strategy, where if you pit at the right time and you find yourself not caught in traffic compared to your adversary, you may come out ahead. So that's all to be considered by our drivers, as we can see them all right now just getting in their final practice laps. Now, it has been confirmed to us, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, if you've been looking at both Seal and also Kelly and seeing that they're running in the Igneo Motorsport liveries, they are indeed a part of Igneo Motorsport, so we will be having their team names updated very shortly for you, so that way there's no confusion as to which team that they are racing for. And it's always good to hear of different drivers racing for teams. It always adds a little bit of mixture to, a little bit of flavour to the mix, and as a result, we're happy to see the Igneo Motorsport guys taking to the circuit. Big supporters of the series, and indeed we do love seeing the likes of Paul King and also his colleagues racing out there. We've also got Ben Hicks, Jaco Boshoff in the Apex Racing Academy lobby, and of course Koshi Kelly, and also what is there? Still racing around in the Coach Dave Academy lobby, as we are now just waiting to get underway. But whilst we are waiting, of course, be sure to let me know your predictions if you have not seen this race already as to how it's going to go. And if you have seen it already, well, please try not to spoil things too much, of course, just for the simple reason that there's going to be some people watching here who do not know what's going to happen as we come to the end of the practice session, and it is now time to grid for the feature. So as our drivers now start to form themselves up on the grid, it is going to be the situation right now where as we look to that grid forming, we're going to take you through the grid order. It's going to be a full formation lap here at Sebring. So our grid, without further ado, line up on the front row will be Paul Walton and Jamie Dory. And Paul Walton line up on the front row alongside Jamie Dory. A little bit confused about that. That does sound as though Walton should be a bit further down the order. That may be a glitch on our screen, but it does look as though Walton's starting right at the front there. In fact, no, that is a glitch. My apologies, ladies and gentlemen. So we will not be able to do it there from the settings. We're going to try and clear that information and bring it back for you very shortly. But Walton definitely not starting on pole, and neither is Dory, who's starting a long way down the field. And I get the feeling our order will be updated very soon, but we will try and reload that data for you very shortly, as we are just waiting right now. In fact, we have just finished the gridding process, so now our drivers are going to pull away and we'll see them all form up in their correct order very shortly, and then we can tell you who is starting where, as we just wait for them all to pull off the line here. And there we go, it has been updated, so now hopefully we can bring you that grid. No, we can't bring it to you via this screen, but we can bring it to you, of course, via the racing information here. So it will be the case. So it's going to be Michael Seal alongside Jardine line up on the front row, then Chris Keenan and Liam Tack on the second row. Elwin Sykes and Luke Hobson on row number 3, Paul Colburn and Mark Sykes on row number 4, Gareth Mills and Mark Baker on row number 5 as we look down to them here. Then we've got David A. Farber and Darren Doherty on row number 6, followed by Alistair Kirk and Paul Williams on row number 7. Two drivers who had major incidents in the sprint race and really felt the pinch there because of that. And as we look further down, we do also see Sam Holman there alongside what is Stuart Taylor on what is row number 8. Stefan Vessels there, who'll be lining up in what is P17, and he will be very far away from his AM class opponents, and as a result he'll find his way on through, and that's row number 9. Alongside him will be Nigel Stock, and then we have row number 10, that is Paul Scott and James Neve, and then behind them we've got Matthew Prouting and Lamont Wedder, who are in the row number 11, and then we are going to have Nathan Scott alongside Stefan Albanese on row number 12, and then row number 13 consists of Jamie Dory and Koyoshi Kelly, and then behind them we've got Gareth Williams and Dan Mooney. Well, in fact it'll be Paul Walton, my apologies there, who'll be starting off our 14th row. Our 15th row will consist of Dan Maury and Jack Wyborn, and then last but not least will be Tom Delaney, who I believe is starting from the pit lane if he's able to get that car fixed in time for the race. As we see all of our drivers make their way on through, and we can see in the Facebook chat there saying hello to Paul King and saying hello to what is Mark Sykes there. But as we look back up towards our front right now, it's going to be a very different feeling for a number of drivers here, starting at the head of a pack, particularly Seal, who'll be starting all the way at the front, the Igneo Motorsport driver here in a very comfortable position. We expect the pro driver to potentially make the break very early on. Can he do it? That's the big question, of course. Will he be able to make the early break, or will it come back to haunt him, that position? And alternatively, it'll be an opportunity right now for this man here, the AM driver, who really is out of position. If you're wondering why I hesitated a little bit when I said that Stefan Vessels was on what was the 10th row of the grid, because to see an AM driver so far away from the rest of his colleagues in the class is a little bit of an oddity. I'm not going to lie here, ladies and gentlemen. Of course, that throws a very different element into the mix, as we do see them all making their way down. I think we've got a driver with some slight technical issues there. That's Chris Keenan, who's having some disconnection issues right there. But as they all make their way down towards what is now Le Mans corner on this full formation lap, and it's going to be the manual double file rolling start, of course, and it will be for Sil to take us away and Jardine alongside them as they make their way down now towards 16, and only one long straight to go, and then they prepare to go racing for an hour here at Sebring in the feature. And remember, the pit stops are going to be critical here. We saw how strong the pit stops were over the course of the feature race in the Apex Racing Academy lobby, but particularly how drivers were able to essentially gain multiple positions very quickly. Will we see that again? As we say thank you to LMR Ignium Motorsport for confirming that Keely and Sil are both Ignium drivers, and we say hello to Ed Knight, who's cheering on Ignium Motorsport as well. But without further ado then, it is for Sil to take us away for the start of the feature race. And as he makes his way out the final corner, it is green already as Sil leads our field away for 60 minutes of the feature at Sebring as they come charging down towards turn 1. He's already got a major advantage over Jardine, who's had a good start. Liam Tack in P3, meanwhile, is starting to get swamped here in the long run down towards turn number 3. And we can see behind here how Hobson and Keenan all trying to stay in pursuit as they make their way through as Hobson and Keenan side by side. It does look as though Hobson getting ahead here as further back we can see Elwin Sykes battling with Mark Sykes into turn number 3, and as they make their way through, Sykes trying to get past the South African of the same namesake as they make their way up into turn 5. But High and Paul Colburn sandwiched in here in the BMW as the two Ferrari drivers continue to play side by side through turn number 6, going through the big bend right now. Gareth Mills also in the mix here as they come roaring on down. We're hearing that Paul Scott and Keely have had a major instant further down the order as we look here, and it looks though what Keely spun on the corner there. But meanwhile, looking back up front as they all come through the hairpin for the first time of asking, you can see how further back Gareth Mills looking for that move here on what is Colburn. He's going to come on through for P8 as he makes his way up into P7 in the AM classes. Meanwhile, behind them, it's the case that Mark Baker here, well, he's holding on to P11 at the moment. We can already see Alistair Kirk starting to scythe his way through, and in fact Kirk there in the Lamborghini making his way past Paul Colburn here, and the pro driver making no time wasted in terms of trying to come through the AM drivers. He comes up the order as we're hearing that Matthew Prouting has had a major moment, and it looks like Prouting has dropped down the order considerably here, the RP Motorsports driver, after a reasonable start as they make their way up towards Tower Corner, and that is a Ferrari going from there. Oh goodness me, and it looks like Jamie Dory just clipping the inside there of Prouting, who I don't think had anywhere to go, and as a result multiple cars getting caught up, but they've been able to recover it. They've all got through, but Dory gains the position, but that contact costly for Prouting, who looks like he's nursing some damage on the car, as this is the battle for P22. Dory versus Williams as they come into the next flowing set of corners through the right into left of 14 and 15, but as they make their way through, I can tell you right now, it is the case that our race leader has had none of these issues. He's made the break, and as he comes through the final corner, it's going to be Sil leading after one lap by 4 seconds over Mark Jardine, who's down in P2. Or in fact, Liam Tack going very deep there into the corner, and what has happened to Jardine, who's gone very, very wide. You can see him parked up there, which all gone horribly wrong for another driver, but it does mean that Luke Hobson now, as he goes on to lap number 2, is into the lead of the AM class here. Liam Tack right now into Old Firm versus Chris Keenan behind the Belgian here, looking for the move, and a lovely livery on that car from Chris Keenan, it should be pointed out, representing the Belgian colours on the BMW. But enough about the colours, you say, as we can see Mark Sykes here in P5 right now, trying to find his way past Keenan. He can't quite do it right now, as you can see behind. That's Gareth Mills in P6. Alistair Kirk, the second of our pro drivers, in P7, almost losing the front end of his Lamborghini there as Mills cut across into turn 5 to take the racing line as they make their way on through the corners right now. It's the case Elwin Sykes down in P8, then Mark Baker P9, Nigel Stott P10, then we've got Paul Colburn in P11, followed by Davide Favo in P12, and then we've got Paul Williams here, our 4th place man in the pro class, as they all come roaring on down towards the corner, and we can see at the front of your camera here, Davide Favo looking for the
move versus Coburn, but he can't quite find it. As meanwhile behind, I'm hearing that Vessels is making ground already. He's making the Earthshake as he comes on through. Oh, goodness me, in the rear of your picture there, we've got Dan Mori up on his side almost as he was coming out of the hairpin, clipped in amongst what Stefan Albanese and also Lambert Wedder, and I think the three of them there all trying to emerge from the apex of the hairpin, and I think Mori was on the inside of the pair of them there, and 3 went into 2 going into 1, and they found out that you can only go 1 a line there through turn 7 through turn 9, and as a result all 3 drivers now dropping positions as we're hearing that Neve is coming out of the pits right now after picking up damage on the opening lap. He's down in P30, but meanwhile looking even further down the order we can see Darren Doherty meanwhile in P28, and it has gone very, very wrong for the Altitude Esports drivers. Now got it all to do once again, as meanwhile one driver who's having a good time right now, indeed fighting past his peers in the Pro Machine, it is Nigel Stock here in the Ford G2, who's just trying to siphon his way on through with the Ford Mondeo BTCC inspired livery there as he goes charging down towards turn number 17 once again. Now as he makes his way down at this point, we can see everybody now starting to settle into a bit of a formation, as we're hearing that Sam Holman's had another off somewhere on circuit, dropping down to P28, but as they make their way on through once again, it's Sill who now raises the fastest lap of this race to a 201.0. Indeed on heavy fuel, it's going to be that situation where he's giving it all he's got. Everybody forming into a line now, all coming into a line astern down towards turn number 1 on lap number 3, and this is where the racing really starts to now be treated in terms of looking for those moves. You can see Stock there just simply coming on through like a missile in that Ford GT compared to Mills, but Mills backing off there has actually cost himself major time versus Baker as they make their way into the corner, and Baker trying to sniver on the inside, and it's the case that Baker just simply being squeezed on the door shut as Mills closed the door there at the last possible moment. I think if it had been any later then there would have been a major incident between the two of them, but Baker just having enough leverage on the brakes to get the car stopped, but that was very close to discomfort for the pair of them as they make their way on down. Meanwhile further I can tell you there's the Lamborghini of Kirk who's making his way past Tack and going charging after Hobson and Sill as the P2 driver in the Pro Class continues that momentum after our leader, but further back meanwhile as they're all trying to navigate their way on through, we can see here it's the case as Liam Tack is dropping down the order like, well, I thought he was dropping down the stone, he just had a brief disconnection there. He's actually made his way back into position now. We can see it's the case that Sykes versus Baker as the 2 Ferrari drivers covering the corner. There's contact there on the front axle, and I think Sykes has just been knocked a little bit wide. Now he'll have to be sensitive to that damage in the car because he may as a result have to come into the pits early in the next gen racing orange driver. Bit of door to door there between himself and Baker, and that has hurt him considerably as he makes his way on through it. And meanwhile we have got a car, and that is your eyes are not deceiving you, that is Liam Tack who's had a moment there at turn 13 and has gone off circuit. He's been spun by looks of things as he now rejoins on the exit of 13, and as they all make their way on through right now, I think Alistair Kirk may have been involved in a bit of an incident up there as well. We can see Kurt here as we've got a car going off there, and that is I think Jamie Dory coming across the apex of turn 15, so Dory being pushed a little bit wide or getting it wrong into 14, but it is all kicking off right now as we've got Chris Keenan who's having some disconnection issues, and I think Keenan in fact is disconnected from the race unless I'm very much mistaken, but with everything kicking off the way, in fact Keenan's jumped to the pits. It's just been pointed out to me he's picked up damage on the car, but whilst this is all happening I can tell you that Mark Sykes right now as he makes his way through the final corner here, I do think Sykes is having to try and balance the car, and also he's got 2 cars on his inside here as they make the way down towards turn number 1 once. Oh goodness me, and that's Stefan Vessels who's got squeezed to the wall, and it does look as though the South African has had his race go horrifically wrong as they try to go 4 wide, and that car is not going anywhere. As meanwhile looking further up the road here we can see it's Mark Sykes battling in amongst the drivers, and we can see ahead it's the case that Paul Walton coming on through versus Gareth Williams. A smart move there from Walton with all the carnage that is happening, or the chaos I should really say, because most at the moment most cars are still racing in this race, albeit with some damage of some description. Walton finding his way on through and getting himself up to P12 overall, and that is P7 in class as he makes his way down towards turn number 7. But definitely, whereas in the sprint race it was quite energetic and quite battle and chaotic in the feature, well they're upping it a notch, and I expected it to be a little bit calmer I must say, but instead they are taking it up and they are not letting go of the intensity here, as we can see Elwin Sykes now moves up to P18 ahead of Mark Sykes. P7 to Elwin right now in the AM class. But whilst this is all happening, I believe further down the order we are hearing that Stefan Vessels may be having to make a visit to the pit lane soon, as that Ferrari is not in a good state. I think he might be jumping to the pits, or he's going to try and creep it to the pits. But meanwhile our race leader in a very peaceful race lead, and it's the case that our second place man in the Pro Class right now chasing down Hobson here, and you can see Nigel Stock just enjoying I think the experience of being able to unleash that Ford GT without any major pressure behind him. But speaking of pressure, if you want a pressure cooker right now, we ride on board with Paul Walton, who's trying to find his way through the sequence of corners here, through 15 and into 16. And as he comes rip-roaring on through, it is a situation right now where trying to keep his nose down as much as humanly possible as he charges down towards turn number 17 here. Now, can he find his way past Taylor? That's the big question. Will he be able to get past the TGC machine, or will the RD Simsport driver be held at bay as they make the way in towards the corner? He's going to look to the inside here, and you can see Taylor there, aware of the fact that Walton was looking for it, and as he was cognizant of it, he's going to look to try and cut back Taylor. But I think Walton's nailed the line here, and as they exit and head down towards turn number 1 once again, and you see Liam Tack there starting to make his way out of the pits in P30, a lap down. We can see it's now Walton on the inside versus Taylor on the outside. They're going to left-hander 1, and Walton's going to hold this position, I think, as Tack comes out there at the bottom of your camera, and as they make their way up towards turn number 3, you can see getting in on this now is Williams, as Williams looks in a move here, but he can't quite find it as he has to park the car and wait for an opportunity. But you can imagine at this point, with Williams in particular, what he'll be hoping is that Taylor and Walton really cost one another a lot of time right now. And the field, to be fair, with 9 minutes of this race complete, whilst our leader has broken away, he's the best part of 11 seconds ahead of the rest of the field. The majority of the field is very close together still, and the AM drivers in particular, with all the battling on the opening lap, have cost themselves an opportunity to put some distance between themselves and the pros who are trying to come off and through. And this will help the likes of Williams, Scott, Walton, Taylor, and also Gareth Williams out massively. The first Williams being Paul Williams, who will all try to capitalise now by getting up through the field. We've had a lot of AMs drop down the field early on in the race, so this really changes the dynamic. We'd normally expect to see the push through of the higher class drivers going into at least the opening 30 minutes, but here it's going to be the case. I think it might be said and done within 25 minutes of racing. If so, we will have some major races amongst class drivers rather than inter-class. As we can see just at the head of this, Walton having a bit of a difficult run there, coming out of the tower as he's going to try and go around the outside to inside of Scott, and as Scott looks to defend in Nathan J. Scott, is the case he's going to stay on the outside here. I don't think he's going to put up as much of a defence as he would potentially do if it was the sprint race right now, just being very, very calm about it. As meanwhile, Colburn is falling down the order, and it looks as though the AM driver in the BMW's had a major moment, and well, we can see it's the case that car not in a happy place as he now rejoins the racing. And meanwhile, further up the road, it is the case that Nathan J. Scott here chasing after, well, being chased after by Stuart Taylor, as we can see Taylor getting close but not able to go on the move, and Walton, having got past the Porsche driver, is already running off into the distance here. As we see Scott in the TGC racing machine right now has got his fellow teammate behind him here, and I think the two of them are going to need to discuss how they deal with this, because right now they've got a very angry BMW behind him, and that is Gareth Williams, who's going to try and come through here. He looks the inside into 1, and Taylor's not going to be able to shut the door this time as the next gen racing BMW just simply sipes his way down the inside. We've got some smoke coming up there on the exit of 1. I think somebody's locked up the brakes at some point, but oh goodness me, and that looks as though it's gone horribly wrong, and that I believe was Hobson getting it all sorts of wrong there on the entry into turn 3, and the car just releasing, and fortunately for the driver he made contact with, I think that was Gareth Williams. Williams not being sent off there and just simply holding firm, but he will have some damage on the car, and he will be needing to manage that now as he goes deep into this race. But meanwhile, Jamie Dory here, Dory trying to look for a move past Taylor in the run. Someone, it was Taylor in fact who picked up the damage. My apologies, ladies and gentlemen, Taylor, not Williams. And we see Hobson has jumped to the pits after that moment as they make their way through turn number 8 and up towards 9. Does Dory chasing after Taylor, but it's these little incidents that shows you how difficult it is at Sebring, how tight a circuit is, and how that can be so disruptive as they make their way up into the braking zone once again here through the right-hander. And you'd imagine at this point what Dory's going to be looking to do is simply try and find his way on through if he can versus the wounded Ferrari. But that wounded Ferrari, whilst it has got some damage on the front right-hand side from the driver's perspective, front left from your camera perspective until the camera spins round here, it is the case that right now Taylor is not going to give this one up. As meanwhile, I'm hearing that Walton has found his way past Williams, Paul Williams here, and you can see in the rear of your picture actually Williams really going slowly at this point. The Team Tetra Rouge driver not with a lot of pace as he makes his way down towards turn number 16 here. I think it might be the case that Paul Williams, he's just keeping his head down and thinking, no, I'm not as fast as the guys around me, but what I can do is just simply run at a consistent pace and try and bring this one back later on. You never know what he could be doing at this point. He may even be doing a lot of fuel saving. Now, we did hear about that from a number of drivers at the end of the feature race about how much fuel saving they do as Gareth Williams comes on through, but I do wonder here whether Paul Williams has got some damage onto that car, because it is going very slowly by comparison with the cars around him.
And this is not looking the happiest of laps, as meanwhile ahead you can see that Walton now looking to make the move, and Favo as they come down towards turn 1 here, but Favo's not going to let them through as he goes defensive and signals his intent very early, as Jack Wybon has jumped to the pits recently from what I'm hearing, and it's not his day at the office. But meanwhile up the road we can see Gareth Williams having to defend here, well sorry, not Gareth Williams, Gareth Mills I should say, having to defend here versus what is Kirk as they make their way through the corner, and as they now come through what is turn number 6 as they go through the big bend and head up towards the hairpin. We can see it's the case that Mills getting the flash through by Kirk here to say, look, do not fight me, I'm not in the same class as you. But Baker's going to try and come on through here, and I think Mills at this point has decided, you know what, Baker, if you're going to come through like that, I'm going to let it go, because there's no point. I don't want to end up falling backwards as we see Favo. Oh goodness me, and that is Davide Favo going skating across the grass there, and Walton was in with him, but it looks as though there was contact. Well, Walton has not been severely knocked by it, but Walton just carrying on his merry way right now. Would love to see what happened there, but unfortunately we can't. But it would be interesting to see whether there's contact or whether Favo just completely missed his braking point or something else entirely happened. As we continue to look around here, and we can see that Scott, meanwhile, the TGC racing machine, as he makes his way for the right-hander of 12 and up towards 13. Scott doing everything he needs to right now, Nathan Scott, to hold off the 2 Williams behind him. When we say the 2 Williams, we're not referring to a Formula 1 racing team, we're referring to the fact we've got Gareth Williams and Paul Williams behind. I don't think they're related, but they definitely bear the same namesake, and as a result, as they make their way around through the corners right now, it's the case that Nathan Scott having to do a lot to hold off the BMW and Ferrari behind him, as we're 14 minutes into this hour right now. Still, we do have the best part of 46 minutes remaining, and it is proving to be very dicey here at Sebring right now. As we can see, it's the case that Scott here pulling defensive early versus Gareth Williams, pulling off of that line to prevent the BMW driver from getting the slipstream to compound what is already a very strong straight line speed in that BMW. And as they come through the right-hander here, it's the case that Nathan Scott holding on for now, but he's going to be on that compromised line, and behind you can see how Paul Williams has got Prouting over the back of him as they come roaring on down towards turn number 1. And as we look to Gareth Williams here, we ride on board with the BMW driver as he looks at that potential move. He's going to consider it here as they go into the braking zone, and as they make the way in at this point, you can see how Scott looks at the cutback, but Williams parks it on the apex and says, no, I'm very aware of that one. And you can see flashing his lights already, as we can see that Paul Williams now looks at a move on the inside here, and Paul Williams capitalises, but now it's a switch back to the right and to left, and the Team Tetra Rouge driver just does not have the momentum or the confidence to try and hold that inside line. And given how tight it is through 4 into 5, now Prouting, with Paul Williams being off of the ideal line, Prouting's going to come on through, and they can all come through now with Paul Williams having lost so much momentum. As we see, it's Taylor and also Wedder just coming in. Taylor down the inside of Paul Williams, and I think we're going to see a cascade here as Wedder comes in, and we can see behind them there how Kelly, having had that earlier incident and just missing there the car that's gone wayward of what was there, the car of Paul Williams. And we can see Jamie Dory is coming through as well, and the Ignium Motorsport driver, in looking for one opportunity, has lost out massively. But I do wonder if there is an issue with Paul Williams' car right now, because it is so sluggish to get up to momentum. Once it's up there, it seems to be okay, but it's how long it takes to get up to momentum, unless Paul Williams is working on some sort of master plan here, the Ferrari master plan. But we'll have to wait and see as Dory's gotten through, and he's been able to clear the rather slow moving Ferrari driver by comparison at this time. But we have got a question mark over that as we check in with you guys and girls in the chat. And as it's all kicking off right now, we can see CXR Racing there in the YouTube chat saying plenty of action, and indeed fantastic action so far. And CXR Project Black Team Racing, the Apex Racing Academy lobby, keep your eyes out for them, ladies and gentlemen, over the course of the weeks to come. But meanwhile, as we look from the battle here between what is Dory, Paul Williams and Lambert Wedder, and you see Wedder actually in fact pulling away from Dory and going on the move and the offensive here versus the Team Racing Netherlands driver in the long charge down towards turn number 1 once again as they go rip-roaring on down the long charge here as they make their way into the corner. It looks as though Lambert Wedder, as he tries to get a cut back here through the right hander of turn number 17, I don't think it's going to be a case he's able to find his way on through as they make their way down towards turn 1. But we know the Team Racing Netherlands driver is very persistent when he looks and moves. He's going to try and go around the outside of what is Taylor here. This is quite rare to try and do it, particularly when you haven't got such a major overspeed. And Wedder not able to find his way through, but he's trying, I think, to get in the mind of Stuart Taylor, trying to make Taylor make a mistake. But all he's doing right now is costing himself time. In fact, so much so that Jamie Dory is inching closer corner by corner as they make their way through turn number 5 and into Big Bend. But meanwhile, whilst these guys are duking it out for what is P10 on circuit, P8 in class, further up the field, I can tell you that Gareth Mills, meanwhile, Having had Mark Baker coming through the hairpin, Baker getting it very wrong there, in fact, on the exit of the hairpin and almost losing the rear of the car coming up through turn 8. It does look as though Gareth Mills right now versus Baker as they make their way through the corners here. It would seem that Baker are leader in what is the AM class right now, and this is going to be quite foreign territory for Baker in the fact that when he was in the lead of the AM class in Season 1, it only went one way and it went downwards. Will the Briton be able to pull it off here with right now Mills behind him, as Mills is going to try and close up, and this is huge territory for the pair of them right now. This will feel special, particularly for Gareth Mills, who's really been one of those drivers who's been fighting too for now in Season 1 to try and get himself up onto the podium in the races in the AM class, and this could be a huge opportunity today. But still, we have got the best part of 42 minutes left. It's not over yet, and anything can happen until we pass that checkered flag as waved by Barney, our flag steward, as meanwhile we can, our flag bearer and flag waver, as it, oh goodness me, and Prout in there getting it wrong on the exit of 16, and we've got Jamie Dory collecting him there and sending him for a spin, and well, it looks as though Prouting has been turned around. I think Dory at that point will just literally come through with an Audi, which is not looking very good in terms of its health anymore, and Dory has cost himself a major opportunity here, and Prouting with that moment where he's going to try and soldier on his Prouting as he carries on down towards what is the final corner. But Prouting at this point I think will be seething that he made a mistake of his own doing, and he's had an Audi R8 that's decided to come through like a bulldozer, as we can see the RP Motorsports driver here coming through turn at number 17. But I think Dory was battling with someone coming out of 16, to be fair, ladies and gentlemen, and Dory won't have seen the BMW until it was too late, although it did look from the camera angle there as though Dory tried to turn himself into a construction machine. It's the case that both drivers into the pits and doing repair work, as meanwhile Gareth Mills continues to fall backwards from Baker now, and you can see Paul Walton, he's already up into P4 in classes, Paul Walton in P6 overall, and now he's going to try and come on through here under braking into turn number 7. He can't quite find it at the moment, instead he has to wait, he has to be patient and look for an opportunity on the next run around the circuit, as meanwhile Lambert Wedder, with all this going on, I can tell you right now the Dutchman here, after everything that's happened, he's chasing after Keeley in P10, as we can see the Team Racing Netherlands driver hunting down the Briton ahead of him, or the Englishman ahead of him, of what is Keeley, as they come through the left-hander of 9 up into 10 once again, and as they go charging on through right now, no way through at this time for Wedder, he's got to wait. But the gaps between drivers now starting to open up a little bit now that we're 20 minutes in. But to be fair, our prediction in terms of the AM drivers being cleared by the pros early on, most of that has come true to some sort of extent. We've still got Baker and Mills right in the midst of the main pro pack, but we can see that the AMs are now starting to fall down the order and into the natural order of things in terms of overall pace. But again, we've still got the whole pit window to come. And well, whilst we have had one pit stop for Dan Morey, who had that major incident at the start coming out of turn 7, which saw him go up on his side almost, in contact with Lambert Wedder and also one other driver, it is the case that right now I think Dan Morey is going to be the one to watch in P11 in his class, P17 overall, in case he's got the fuel to go to the end. But otherwise everybody will just be looking for those opportunities, as we see Gareth Mills then moving out the way of Paul Walton, and by a considerable margin pulling out the way and getting the cutback here in the run down towards turn number 1. And I think the idea behind that from Gareth Mills, he gives himself the best possible straight line speed in the run down towards 1, and whilst he won't be looking to pass back through Walton, he can at least get a little bit more momentum in the run onto his next lap of the circuit, as these guys go onto lap number 11, and they've still got 40 minutes of racing as they come on through to 3. But as they make their way through at this point, we look a bit further down the order, we can see the AM driver here, Dan Doherty, closing up to the back of Paul Colburn as they make their way down towards what is turn at number 1 here, and they go on to their next lap, and you can see the Ferrari driver looking quite feisty as they come all the way down here. But it does look as though as well at the moment as they make their way through the left-hander, as though they're not really coming together at this time and not going to be doing any dancing on circuit right now. I think it's the case that Doherty, the Irishman, just waiting for that opportunity. And we know the Altitude Esports driver, very fast driver in his own capabilities here. Can he find his way on through? Boy, if Colburn keeps making mistakes like that, he definitely will, as they make their way all the way down towards turn number 7 at the head of this pack. We can see Davide Favo here having a bit of a slow run out of Big Bend as they make their way down towards Hairpin, and as they come in towards 7 into the braking zone. That's Elwin Sykes behind him here, and I'm wondering if we're potentially going to see a move between the two light-for-light teammates here as they make their way through the corners, and as they come up on through at this point, And it's going to be one of those situations that as they come through the corners here, we can see Poi Pecco saying, let the record show that Walton did not touch Favo. And that from an independent source. Good YouTube chat and a little bit of joking around and banter in there. And it did look as though Favo speared his way off the corner there. But if it's confirmed that it was not contact between what appeared to be, I think it was Walton and Favo, then that is fair enough. And thank you for clarifying in the chat. Although I think that is Paul Walton in the chat himself clarifying that one. So that's why there might be a little bit of a joke about this is suspicious or whatnot. But looking away from the chat and back to the racing right now, with all this happening, I can tell you that one driver who's really come up through the field and is now into P3 and hunting down a driver who's been doing nothing for a fault of his own. It's Alistair Kurt, the TGC racing driver, who's got himself up into P3. Paul Walton into the pits from what was at the time P4. So the pro driver has gone early here, and as a result, this could really open the race up because Walton has taken a pit stop much earlier than we would have expected. But I think Walton has seen a window on circuit and he thinks that he can come back out in clear air and go hunting after at least a podium in the pro class. If not, the win, we'll wait and see. But stock right now versus Sil. Well, Sil is the best part of 18 seconds up the road here as we ride on board with the Lamborghini Huracan of Alistair Kirk right now as he looks to charge after Nigel Stock. Now, what can Kirk do versus the Ford GT? Well, Kirk will know he has got the better handling car of the two of them, but it's that raw grunt of that Ford GT on the straight. So we see Kirk, they're getting a little bit of snap understeer on entry. You could see as he tried to turn the car in, the car did not want to settle. All it wanted to do was say, I want to go straight on, I don't want to turn into the apex. And Kirk has lost a bit, and I think he might have lost a little bit of aerodynamic downforce on the front end of the car there under braking because of the dirty air off the back of Stock's car. Because that Ford GT, despite its size, one thing it will be doing is punching a massive hole in the air in front of it, and that will be compromising the front end downforce on the Lamborghini Huracan of Kirk as they make their way into the right-hander right now of what is turn number 13 Tower Corner, and they emerge. But you can see Kirk is continuing to close here as it looks as though Stock's really having to push that Ford GT through the corners versus the Huracan driver, and as they make their way up into 14-15, this is where we're going to see it, where you've got that momentum change, the roll of the car from the right into the left-hander, and you can see how Kirk is closing considerably as they go into 16 here, and if he can nail the exit, but Stock does a fantastic job of nailing his own exit here, I think it's going to be one of those situations where it's neutralised right now because Stock will have that straight line speed. You can see how little that gap is coming down. In fact, I can tell you that Stock is almost starting to break away until the overspeed when the slipstream really kicks in. But as they now come into turn number 17 once again here and make their way on through the corner, you can see how Kirk really pushing hard to try and close down that P2 right now. And I think he'll want this sooner rather than later because if he can't get the move done on circuit, he'll need to get it done through strategy. And on strategy right now, that is going to put him somewhere down the order, although there is a big gap in the field. And Paul Walton has actually come out and cleared traffic. You can see on the circuit map there, Paul Walton in the number 17 position is just coming through turn number 16 right now, and he's got a good gap. So as a result, the pit window is open for our leaders. If they make pit stops now, they could end up, when I'm talking about our leaders here, I'm talking about really our top 5. They could end up coming out in a rather nice bit of clear air if they're able to come out ahead of P11, who's Davide Favo, as meanwhile we continue to watch the battle for P2 as it builds up. But meanwhile, whilst this is happening, it is the case that I'm hearing that Darren Doherty right now in a bit of a pressure cooker situation of his own, chasing after Elwin Sykes as the two Ferrari drivers make their way through turn 1 and head down towards turn number 3. And as they come into the heavy braking zone here, it does look as though Darren Doherty trying to hold on for the time being onto the back of Elwin Sykes, but not able to close up enough as they make their way through the first third of the circuit. And you can see Elwin Sykes actually getting it wrong there on the exit of 5 and having to do a little bit of a run across the grass. And Doherty and Maury coming on through. And Dan Maury here, our winner in race number 1, really making a lot of ground right now as he comes up in towards the hairpin here. And I do wonder if Maury's got another pit stop to make given how early he pitted. But it is the case that right now Maury doing everything right to try and recover this race as he makes his way on through alongside the other Altitude Esports machine that is behind him. That's Darren Doherty right now, and I think the two drivers are not going to impede one another at all as they make their way on through. But meanwhile, whilst they're coming around through the circuit right now, further down the order, we've got Mark Jardine here making his way through what is turn at number 7 through the hairpin, chasing after Kelly. But of course, Kelly and Holman ahead of him, both in the Pro Class versus the AM driver here. And I think the AM driver will just be grateful that he is going to get a bit of a tow on the straights here, a double tow in fact, and that could really benefit him in trying to close goes up to the AMs further up the road, as we do know that Jardine has yet to take a pit stop, so it is not proven to be the most eventful race for him right now after what was a very difficult start, which saw him drop all the way down the order. But of course, plenty to learn from here for the AM driver as he makes his way through turn 13 right now and heads around and down towards the runway. But meanwhile, further up the order, I can tell you that Lambert Wedder right now with the battling, he's yet to get past Stuart Taylor, and Taylor really holding on despite how crumpled that Ferrari is on one side, particularly on the right hand side here. It's not letting him down, it's not putting him down at all, and in fact he's doing a fantastic job. His lap times right now for Stuart Taylor are matching the guys around him, and it does look as though Taylor doing everything right now as we hear Paul Williams and also Davide Favo into the pits, and as a result we are going to be seeing some more of our pit stops right now. But a lot of our leaders hesitant to come in. The only leader who's made that pit stop, and we talked about him a little bit earlier, is Paul Walton, who is coming up through the field now. More pit stops are occurring, so Walton is the one to watch out for, and he is setting blisteringly fast laps right now. He is matching the guys further up the road, if not going slightly faster than by a couple of attempts. So as a result, Walton really could make this one work if he's able to keep it together and not make any mistakes. But he does have some traffic ahead of him, and that is Mark Sykes. He's also got Tack ahead of him, and that is Liam Tack, but Tack I think is going to be moving off the racing line for him shortly, as I'm hearing that Stock has just been passed by Alistair Kirk, and as a result we didn't quite catch that on camera, but Stock has lost the position to Kirk, and if I'm hearing correctly in my ear right now, the move was made down into what was the hairpin, so as a result it was a move on the inside. I think Stock did not battle it too hard from what I'm hearing in my ear, so Stock now down to P3, Alistair Kirk up into P2, and can he chase down Seal? Seal of course the best part of what is 18.5 seconds up the road from the Lamborghini driver right now, with Kirk can, in terms of those relative laps, Michael Seal the last lap a 201.2 versus a 201.3 for Alistair Kirk, so they're matching lap time. But of course now we wait to see what Kirk can do in clear air and not having to try and chase after the rear end of that Ford GT, as meanwhile we can see Stuart Taylor here. Well, he's on the back of what is Scott. That's Nathan Scott ahead as these three, and I say these three as if it's the characters out of Harry Potter. Why is it always you three? They've always been together out of circuit. As we can see Taylor, they're just feeding the bump of the road surface, and it sends him wide as he makes his way down towards turn number 1. And as they come across the timing line here, it's the case that Scott, Wedder and Taylor all charging down towards turn 1. I think Taylor at this point may be considering about does he pit soon to repair that damage for that fast repair available to him, because I think that damage is costing him a little bit over the course of a lap, especially when he feels those bumps at the final corner and any part of the road surface. It seems as though the road surface is unsettling the car, and that is what's led to Wedder coming on through, as Wedder's been building up a lot of momentum. And now can the Dutchman find his way past Scott ahead? And we do know that there's no love lost between these two over the course of the racing so far. Brilliant rivalries building up, particularly in the pro class, but also in the AM class. But in the pros, the rivalries are getting more intense, and we're not even a quarter of the way into the season yet. That'll be the next round when we come to the end of the first quarter. But meanwhile, as they make their way on through the corners right now, we are hearing that Mark Sykes has had a bit of a moment out on circuit. We're just trying to see what's happened here, and Sykes facing the wrong way, and well, we won't be able to take a look back, but I think Elwin Sykes has also been involved in an instant. I think the two of them I'm hearing in my ear, they both went off at turn 1. Both drivers went off side by side battling, and as a result it has gone wrong for the pair of them, as we now hear that Mark Sykes is slowly making his way back onto the circuit here. But it's all gone wrong for the Next Gen Racing orange driver, who was making some ground, and he's got it all to do again with half the race remaining. But meanwhile ahead of him, Paul Scott right now, the pro driver, who we saw take the win of course in the feature race at Daytona in a rather last minute dramatic fashion in the battle with Wiggins, as we can see Scott trying to chase after what is Jardine, and at this point he'll be thinking to himself, Scott, if only it was Daytona once again, I want to be right up the front of the field, not in the mid pack right now. Well, that's the way it goes, but the Next Gen Racing driver will dig deep for this, as we can see he's going to make the move here on Jardine into the corner, but in fact he's not close enough, and Jardine does start to pull to the inside of the circuit there to go defensive under braking as they make their way for 11 up into 12. I think Paul Scott's going to have to be a bit more inventive to get past it. I don't think Jardine realises he's battling with one of the pros, and this can happen of course while drivers getting acquainted with one another, and they have all been reminded about that. Keep an eye out for door numbers and car numbers, because at the end of the day, whilst it's good to battle across classes, you could also be costing one another a lot of time in terms of battling with the wrong driver at the end of the day. But that's all part of it, and of course some of the AMs would love to battle the pros to try and practice their craft, although the pros may not be so keen on that. as they make their way through turn number 16. You can see Jardine, they're getting a little bit squirrely on the exit, the rear of the car, as we're hearing that Dan Murray's just set a 2-minute flat point 2, the fastest lap of anybody. So Dan Murray really coming through the field as we see Scott there flashing his lights and trying to get the message on through as Wedder's coming out of the pit. But as they make their way through, Scott up into P18. Now, where is Lambert Wedder in all of this, you ask? Well, he is right now making his way out of the pit lane very gradually here. He's come in for his pit stop. Now, of course, Paul Walton has already come through the opening sequence of corners. This, the Audi Simsport driver, is making a huge amount of ground, and the only driver ahead of him who's made a pit stop is Dan Murray, and Murray is flying. But remember, the Altitude Esports driver made his pit stop literally at the start of the race. So for the Porsche driver right now, unless he can manage this one to the very end in terms of the fuel, I do suspect we're going to be seeing one more pit stop from Dan Murray. But if he's able to pull this off and gain more places with that pit window still open, it is going to be an absolute masterclass coming through the field from Murray, and a discovery journey of how to recover from an awful start. But we will wait and see how it is going to occur. But meanwhile, it's the case, well, as we can see there, we've got what is, oh, my apologies there for Mr. Kelly. Well, we will get that right next time, and I do apologise for pronouncing your name wrong, my friend. But meanwhile, we can see as our drivers make their way around, it is the case that Dan Murray coming on through turn number 16. But as they make their way through the corners, still it is the situation right now, whereas we look to Kosh here making his way through turn number 13. He's got Wedder ahead of him here, and as they come roaring on down towards turns 14 and 15, making their way into the left, into the right, it's one of those situations where I think with the driver ahead of Elwin Sykes, if both drivers will be looking to get past Elwin Sykes as soon as possible, but they won't want to lose position to the driver around them. And as they come through 16, they make their way through the right-hand sequence here with 33 minutes complete. You can see how the case of Wedder trying to come on through here, and I think the Dutchman's going to make this one quite easy. Now, can the New Motorsport driver follow on through and perhaps look for the move down into 17? I don't think he's close enough to go for it as they come through the right-hander here and head around, but it does look as though Wedder goes a bit deep here, and it's going to be the case that Kelly makes his way through on the inside. It's going to be a drag race down towards turn number 1, and will Wedder be able to defend this one, or will Kelly find a way to snatch back on the inside and go for the cutback, which could be viable? Will Wedder pulls back onto the racing line, but Kelly goes to the inside here and under brake, and it's going to be the Lamborghini on the inside, but Wedder goes all the way around the houses here and holds the position firm, as we do see a car there off in the distance having a bit of difficulty getting out of the pits by the looks of things. But meanwhile, as they make their way through turn number 3, Wedder stays ahead for the time being as they now head on to the second third of the circuit. But meanwhile, as these guys come around, we can see Alistair Kirk, meanwhile, has still got the pressure of Nigel Stock behind him. And whilst he was able to pass Nigel Stock, Stock not letting go of the Lamborghini driver here. And I think it is the case that for Stock, now that he's got a driver ahead of him, he is now chasing after the potential position. And perhaps he feels a bit more comfortable when he's got somebody to chase visibly in front of him, rather than being the driver ahead who's just got a load of clear space. As we can see, the Ford GT driver really has come back alive after falling off briefly as they make their way through the right-hander 17. Now, as they come through that corner at this point, we can see just pushing on through. It's one of the situation that they're just going to keep on coming around. And Alistair Kirk there comes into the pits. Now, Stock going long here. Now, this is interesting. I would have suspected it would have been the other way round, given the fact that Stock was behind and falling back. But at this point, where is Alistair Kirk going to come out? Well, if he's just making his way into his pit box right now, based on looking out of our commentary box window, it's the situation. There is a lot of clear space between here all the way down to turn 16. If we look back on circuit right now, I think this is the perfect time for Kirk to come in, and I think it's going to be a case of who's got the faster stop. As meanwhile, looking further around, we can see Lambert Wedder here making his way through Kelly as they make their way down towards turn number 17, and it is the case they've got Liam Tack ahead in the very heavily wounded Ferrari by the looks of things. And further back, that is a bit back there, that I believe is Holman as they make their way through the corners. Indeed, that is Sam Holman looking for the move, and he's got past Jamie Dory. Well, that was Elwin Sykes. He's got past Jamie Dory trying to hug the back of Holman. As you can see here, the Porsche making its way through the right-hander, and now they head down towards turn number 1 once again, and they cross that timeline to go on to what for them is lap number 18 of the American circuit. And as they come all the way down, you can see in the rear of your picture there, that's Gareth Mills versus Paul Scott, and Scott's going to come through here. Gareth Mills not fighting this one as they make their way through the left-hander of turn 1, and it's quite calm for Gareth Mills right now as he just continues to look on. And meanwhile, Sam Holman here, well, he's got Jamie Dory who's come from the inside. We're just catching the end of this sequence,
and Jamie Dory coming through, and they both go a bit deep into the corner, but as they emerge from turn number 5 right now, can Holman come on back as we ride on board here with the Porsche driver? It's the two German machines looking for the position, and you see Dory defending hard here to the inside. He does not want to lose that position as they go down towards the hairpin. Holman on the outside, Dory on the inside here. It's a battle on the brakes here, and we expect the Porsche will be the stronger of the two to accelerate out of the corner, but Dory getting the better run in the end, just able to rotate the car more comfortably, and now it is the case that Dory is up into P13 overall. What is P11 in class right now? These guys battling, as we can see Dory there flashing his lights, and I think he's trying to get the message through to well, it's the case. I think he's just trying to simply flash his lights and say, let's settle it down, Holman, and make our way up towards Kelly, who's ahead of us and not too far away as they make their way around. Kelly only 4.5 seconds up the road, as meanwhile further up the road from these guys, I can tell you that right now it's the case that both Nathan Scott and Stuart Taylor into the pits, so they decided to pit together, and this may be a bit of a reaction call to the pit stops that have happened further down the order, but we can see Dan Murray staying out still. And Murray pressing on, trying to carry as much time out on circuit right now as he sets another fastest lap, a 2:01 here. Murray is absolutely flying. To give you an idea, the only other driver who has been lapping in the 2-minute flats recently is, based on our time screens, Gareth Williams, who's up the road. Everybody else in the 2-minute ones or higher. Murray is flying like a ballistic missile, but I think Murray may have to pit again soon, and if so, that is going to be a depressing reality he has to come back down to, but one where I think he'll relish the opportunity to gain positions by just running fast, as we see Paul Scott here making his way out to the final corner, and Troy, he's got past Elwin Sykes, who's come into the pit at long last for him, and as they make their way down towards turn number 1 at this point, the field has spaced up, but the strategies now are really starting to play out, and this is the critical part, as we do see Kelly here behind Wedder. Now, how has that changed for you? In fact, no, that happened only moments ago. My apologies, I was going to say, how did this happen? But they were like this previously, as we can see Taylor has come out behind. In fact, this has not worked out for what is Taylor. It's worked out for Nathan Scott, but Taylor right now has come out behind a battle of two drivers. We can see there Kelly on the inside of Wedder going for the late move on the inside of the hairpin and getting it done, does the Englishman, as they make their way out the corner. And now can the Dutchman come on back here as they make their way up through turn 9 very shortly into 10. Now, if we're going to see Wedder come for it, he's going to have to come from quite a way back here, as you can see Kelly putting the car in the middle of the road and saying to the Dutchman behind, look, there is no way you're coming through unless you really commit to that apex. And as they make their way around right now, and we ride on board and look back from the Lamborghini Huracan driver here, you have to imagine that with the squabbling that these two are going through right now, they have both pitted, it should be pointed out. Stuart Taylor is going to be feeling the pain from this the most, he's at the back of this pair. As you can see, every so often the eyes of a Ferrari just poke out a little bit. They're the headlights when we talk about the eyes, and it is the case that Ferrari driver really feeling the pinch right now in terms of losing out in that pit window versus Nathan Scott, who's just running off into the distance as they make their way through. Michael Silva is coming out of the pits, I can tell you, our race leader, but as we focus on the camera right now, it's the long run down towards what is Sunset Bend here, down the Allman Straight once again. As they come charging on down here, we switch to the exterior cameras, and it does look as though Kelly's not close enough to be attacked here by Wedder as they make their way into the corner, and as they come on through, they stay as they were for the time being, but definitely building up to a crescendo between these three. We do see Wedder again, a little bit of an oversteer moment there, coming through the final corner, collecting the car very nicely. It was just a brief moment when the rear started to loosen up, and you can see as a result now Taylor looking for the move here in the rear of your picture as they come in towards turn 1. Taylor on the inside, Wedder on the outside. He's going to try and carry it all the way round and hold that momentum. He does indeed, as it is the case that Taylor cannot find a way through past the Dutchman as they carry up into turn 3. Meanwhile, up front, I can tell you that after the pit window, Michael Steele's still leading by the best part of what is only 3 seconds ahead of P2 man Dan Murray, who you're looking at right now. But again, the big question over the Altitude Esports driver, is he going to have to pit again? Our sources are an indication would be he has to pit again, but with 20 minutes remaining, if he makes it all the way to the end now and has recovered to P2, this is a phenomenal drive. And Nigel Stock, well, he's come out just ahead of Walton, and look at this, ladies and gentlemen, Walton with the undercut, pitting 22 minutes in, has made his way back up into P4, and he's now hounding the back of the Ford GT driver as they make their way through the sequence of corners here. Up into turn 13 they go, but I think at this point the Lamborghini Huracan driver can be right there in the tow like he is right now, coming out to turn 16 onto the Allman Straight. There's going to be a change of position, or at least an attempt at an overtake here, as we see Stock leading in the frame of the picture, and as they make their way up into 14 and 15 here, we're going to see the Ford GT feel the pain of that body roll coming through turn 14 and 15 versus the Lamborghini Huracan. But it's as soon as they come through 16 here, we've seen how strong the Englishman of Stock has been on the exit of 16, but we can see that Walton is right there with him this time as they make their way in the long run down Allman, and as they come charging down towards turn 17, Stock goes defensive. It looks as though we've got Walton trying to go around the outside, and as they make their way on through into that trail braking zone, Stock holds firm. He goes defensive here. Can Walton try and make Stock make a mistake, make him lose the momentum? As you see, Stock has to dab on the brakes. They're the big brake lights on the rear of the Ford GT as they make their way out here, and Walton is as close as he's ever going to get to look for a move as they go on to lap number 21. There's only 19 minutes remaining, and as they come into turn 1, Walton on the outside, Stock on the inside. It's a battle on the brakes and about carrying the speed round for the apex. Walton is still there as they come on through. Stock holds the inside, and Walton has got himself ahead, but will he be able to seal it into turn 3? I think Walton's got it done as they make their way into the braking zone and complete turn 3. Walton up to P3, Stock to P4. Fair racing between the two of them, but in the end Walton just able to carry the momentum round the outside and get the job done. Meanwhile, Alistair Kirk a bit further back in P5 but trying to close up, and he will be the next driver to have Nigel Stock in his sights. He's making his way through the big bend right now. He has got Gareth Williams behind him, as we're hearing that Paul Scott is into the pits right now and dropping down the order as a result. But as those pit stops are now coming to their end, we've practically got everybody doing their last stop in terms of their strategic stop. We can see that right now, Kirk versus Williams, no change between the two of them as they make their way through into turn 9 and up into 10. And as they come through a left-hander here, I do think it's going to be a situation where Gareth Williams is just going to have to wait and hold firm right now and look for an opportunity a little bit later on, as right now the Lamborghini Huracan in the capable hands of Kirk is not falling victim to the straight line performance of that BMW M4 in the cans of Williams. As meanwhile we can tell you that Stock is starting to fall away here from the back of Walton. He's been chasing, much like with what was the situation earlier on when he was pursuing another driver. Stock, it's just one of those situations. It was in fact Kirk, and Stock has come back out ahead of Kirk, it should be noted. Stock able to carry that momentum in the Ford GT, but just not having the capacity really to fight back for positions once he's been overtaken. But I think Stock won't mind, given the fact he's making this car really work. And a lot of people did question going into the season why he picked the Ford GT. Well, it was for one reason, the roar of that engine when he's riding inside the car. People thought he was mad, but right now he's going to make this work. And there is the confirmation, ladies and gentlemen. Dan Murray was due another pit stop. This will be a fuel stop as he comes on in, so he will drop down the order, but we will see where he comes out after all of this. As meanwhile, further down, we are hearing that Nathan Scott right now in the battle for P8 overall. This is P7 in class. They make their way through the right-hander here, and you see Kelly going around the outside as Nathan Scott defends the inside through Sunset Bend, and as they make their way around and complete their current lap, it is the case they're still side by side. It's TGC Racing on the left, it's Signal Motorsport on the right, and as they make their way down towards turn 1, it's going to be very nip and tuck as they go into the braking zone. But I do think it's going to be the case that Scott's going to carry the momentum through, but it does look as though he hesitates for a brief moment, and Kelly comes through, but he looks at the cutback, does Nathan Scott, and as they make their way up into turn 3, will there be an opportunity? No, he has to back off because he's got a lot of pros now trying to come on through behind him, and you can see Lambert Wedder in particular here who's closing up. He does not want to let this one go. You then got Mark Sykes who's a lap down on these guys, and behind them then you've got Stephen Taylor, sorry, not Stephen Taylor, Stuart Taylor, who would be looking to try and come back into this battle for what is P7 overall, P6 in class as they make their way down towards turn at number 7. No potential opportunities this time, everybody too heavily separated as they make their way through the hairpin. And meanwhile, further down the road in the battle for what is P22, and this is effectively P6 in the AM class. We can see Mark Jardine, who we're looking at right now in the centre of your camera, and he's chasing after Elwyn Sykes here as they make their way through turn at number 17. And we'll keep our eyes on Jardine as time goes on here, because he'll be looking for one of his season best performances as this carries on, as he makes his way down towards turn at number 1. And as they come rip roaring on down, it is a situation right now where we can see Jardine just trying to build that momentum, but I don't think he's close enough. In fact, Elwyn Sykes using the mid-engine rear-wheel drive nature of that Ferrari to carry momentum, and you can see Sykes is very aware of the fact the BMW driver is trying to close up on the straights. He's weaving a little bit. He's allowed to do 1 or 2 weaves every so often just to try and break the toe, and he's trying to use that to his advantage. As meanwhile, further up the road, I can tell you that Alistair Kirk in P4 right now has got a lot of pressure building in the form of a BMW behind him, and that is Gareth Williams. Not close enough this time, but these two have been nose to tail for some time with 15 minutes remaining right now, and if they're like this here, can you imagine how it's going to go on for another 15 minutes? My goodness, they're able to stay this close, and Nigel Stock, to be fair, is 2 seconds up the road and is gradually falling to them, it should be pointed out. That last lap, a 2:01.05 for stock. Kirk, a 2:01 flat. Gareth Williams, a 2:07. So right now, Kirk and Williams could be within an opportunity of taking away that podium finish for stock. But first, they've got to settle this battle between the two of them down and then go hunting after the Ford GT driver ahead of them right now, which really does look like a unicorn compared to all the other cars we've got out on circuit. But can the unicorn in the Ford GT be elusive, or will it be the case that Alistair Kirk is going to take him down, or will it be Gareth Williams? We'll have to wait and see. But meanwhile, a bit further down the order here, we can see Nathan Stock battling with Lamont Wedder here as they come through turn number 5. Wedder going a little bit deep, and that's going to cost him major momentum as we ride on board once again with the Porsche 911 driver as they make the way out of Big Bend down towards the hairpin here. And you can see they've released Kelly to go racing, but as they make the way into the corner, Scott looks to the inside under braking. It's a very late move on the brakes, and he goes too deep, and you can see Wedder there looking to try and cut back in, but turning in just a tiny bit too early as Scott had to try and park the car to stop the move. But Wedder making the contact, but the two of them go racing once again. But Wedder gets the position back through a smart cutback play with a tiny bit of contact, and now behind them, look who's caught up to the battle here. It is Stuart Taylor, who's inching ever closer as they make the way through what is turn at number 11 and up into 13 here. And as they make their way through the right-hander and up into what is the tail corner, it is a situation right now where I do think the Ferrari driver will be itching to get past the pair in front of him, having been deprived of an opportunity to be in this battle for some time. What with the pit window not working out to his favour, now he'll be getting into this fight here as we do see Scott trying to go a little bit deep into 14 that inside line, but a bit of a fortuitous move as we Wedder go wrong there and go off circuit. And as he goes to rejoin, he stays out of the way for the time being, showing respect to his peers as they make their way on through. And you see Wedder now join at the back of this train here, but he will have momentum as he rejoins the circuit because he's essentially extended that acceleration zone out of Le Mans corner. You see Mark Sykes behind just doing a little weave there to kill some of his momentum. He doesn't want to close up to these guys because they're on the lead lap and he'd be blue flagged if he tried to pass them. And we can see there Wedder going very deep into the corner, but this is all about the slingshot as he makes his way out of 17. And you see Wedder with so much momentum here as he makes his way down towards the timing line to go on to another lap. 12 more minutes to go, and Taylor has to stay defensive here. That's all he can do as Wedder tries to go in, but Taylor goes deep on the braking and Wedder tries to turn in, but in the end gets a face full of Ferrari as he tries to come on through. And you see behind Sykes right now is probably thinking to himself, if only I was on the lead lap and I'd love to get past you all, as they make their way through turn number 3 and up into 5 right now. And as they come on through, this battle could not be more intense. And speaking of intense battles as well, as they come up through the corners once again, we're hearing that Paul Scott right now trying to go round the outside of Stefan Albanese, and we've also got Sam Holman in the mix as Holman goes to the cutback here on Scott. Can Scott get back into the fight, or will Holman make it 2-on-2 as they make their way down towards where it's turn number 1? You can see we've got a blue flag there up for one of our drivers, I think further down the order, but as they make their way down towards turn 1 here, you can see 3 wide into the first corner. Albanese going so defensive into turn 1, literally parking the car on the inside like a snail to try and prevent anybody from using the cutback. And meanwhile, it's going to be the case that Scott on the inside there of Holman as they come through the corner. They may be battling for P18 overall, they may be battling for P14 in class, but every point, every position means something to them, and it shows as we see Paul Scott holding position right now. And as they make their way through Big Bend and up towards their hairpin once again here, 11 minutes to go, and they come roaring on down towards turn at number 7. You can see Holman on the inside, is Scott on the outside. Holman's going to try and squeeze his nose in, and Albanese there very slow through the corner and really impeding Holman as there's contact between the two of them. And Scott just getting a little bit of a door tap there as Albanese really struggling for pace here. And this is Holman's going to look to the inside. He's going to... Oh, goodness me! And Holman clipping Albanese on the inside edge of the car there into turn 10. Well, I can tell you one thing right now. Paul Scott may have been flashing his lights only moments ago, but I think right now his lights are going to be flashing before his eyes. I'm thinking, goodness me, thank goodness I wasn't in that incident. But that was very unfortunate between Holman and Albanese right now. I think Holman just squeezed up onto the grass there, and Albanese being clipped as a result. But that is one for the stewards to investigate. As meanwhile, as that battle ends, I can tell you another battle that carries on all the same, and they're getting closer and closer to P3 as they come through Big Bend and up towards their hairpin. You can see at the foreground of your picture is the Ford GT of Nigel Stock that's been holding firm in P3 for the best part of what has been the last 20 minutes. And then you've got Gareth Williams and then Alistair Kirk, who are in the centre ground of your picture right now, chasing after that Ford GT. It's Alistair Kirk ahead of Gareth Williams, and the problem is right now that both of them are inching ever closer to Stock. I think they've had to put put aside their differences for the higher cause of chasing down P3. But you can imagine as soon as one of them looks to move on that Ford GT, if stock goes very defensive, they're going to come back together. And this is going to be a three-way fight for the bottom step of the podium in the Pro class as they make their way through the corners. But as they come on through, right now it's the situation as they make their way up towards what it is turn numbers 14 and 15 once again. It does look as though Williams right now just backing off a little bit. He might be doing some fuel saving as well, just to give himself the maximum RPM he can on the remaining 10 minutes, or the remaining 9 minutes now, plus the overtime from the final lap of the race. And as they make their way through the right-hander here of what is turn 16, you can see Stock, when he gets turn 16 right, he's untouchable in the long run down towards Sunset Bend right now. And that's why the Ford GT is such a tricky car to pass here, because whilst it's tight through the corners, and that's where the Ford GT struggles, if it gets a good run everywhere else into the straight, it's pretty much untouchable down towards that braking zone. You can see Stock here really starting to feel the pinch as they make their way through Sunset Bend and coming up into turn 1 once again. As they come across the timeline, you can see now that Alistair Kirk started to flash his lights, trying to say, look at me, don't look at the road ahead of you. But I think Stock's all too aware of this right now. He's seen this all before. His veterancy ahead of his years. As, hold up a second, I think it's the case. Lambert, oh, goodness me. And what's happened to Lambert, Wedder and Nathan Scott? I think the two of them have been involved in an incident into the corner. Unfortunately, we can't bring you the replay of that. But what I can tell you is that right now, the two did connect with one another into turn number 17. And that is very, very unfortunate. But in all of this, look who's coming up through the field now after making 2 stops. It's Dan Morey, and Morey's on the offensive versus Taylor right now, and this is for P9 overall, P18 class, and Morey is going to try and get some points out of this race as he makes his way on through. But he does have the slightly disappearing car there of Stuart Taylor as they make their way through Big Bend here, and I do think that right now Taylor trying to hold firm as he phases in and out of existence every so often here, and Morey's going to look for the move as he makes his way down into turn number 7. Into the hairpin he goes, and as he makes his way through the right hand here, Dan Morey gets it done, or does he, as he gets some snap oversteer on the exit there in the rear of the car and settles. He's got to do it again. It's not enough, and as a result Taylor regains the position as they make their way on through. But meanwhile, whilst this has been happening, you can see that Nigel Stock has dropped down. He's lost one position. He's lost the position to Kirk, and now Gareth Williams is going to try and go around the outside to inside here up into what is 14, but he can't quite find it right now. But he will look for that opportunity coming out of 16. As Alistair Kirk got the move done only moments ago. He got it done into the turn 7 hairpin from what we're hearing. And Nigel Stock now, he's not vulnerable at this time. In fact, he's going to have the slipstream off the back of Kirk here. So I think Stock's going to gain massively on the straight here by comparison with Williams behind. In fact, he is dropping Williams right now, ladies and gentlemen. Note that whilst Williams has got the double toe of the 2 cars in front of him, that is how strong that Ford GT is on the straight, plus the slipstream off the back of Kirk. And that's giving him the ability to stay safe. I think Stock at this point, whilst he'll be a bit upset, he's not going to come home in P3 unless he can find a way to close up to Kirk, or Kirk makes a mistake. I think if he can stay behind Kirk like this, he's going to be safe for the rest of the race and not fall down to P5. But then again, will Williams have something, an ace up his sleeve, in order to come back? As meanwhile, further down the order, I'm hearing that Albanese is ahead of Holman, and these two collected one another at this same corner only moments ago. Holman looking once again, but I think caught twice shy removed as they make their way through turn 10, and you can see Holman there hesitating, thinking, am I going to lose it on the inside again here? Is it going to be the case we're going to come together? And instead he waits patiently and looks for it later on in the lap as they make their way around on through. But meanwhile, looking for these guys to a bit further that road, we can see it's Dan Morey who's got himself ahead of what is the car of Stuart Taylor, and that happened into turn 1. And Morey now up into P8 in class, P9 overall, and chasing down Jamie Dory 1.5 seconds up the road. 5.5 minutes remain. Can Morey get one more position, or is it going to be too far now as the time is running out, and Morey doing everything he can to rebuild what has been a challenging race as he makes his way up into turn number 7. But as he makes his way on through right now, we look a little bit further up the road once again, and we can see it is Nigel Stock ahead of Gareth Williams, and Gareth Williams right now tucked in behind. And if you don't mind, ladies and gentlemen, I'm just going to take a quick sip of water in the build up to the final 5 minutes. As they make their way down towards what is the runway once again here, we can see it's the case that Gareth Williams trying to find a way to get into this battle, not able to find it at the moment. A major change really building as a result.
as they make their way through turn 16, but it looks though Stock's actually had a bit of a poor run there into 16 this time. Looks though the front brakes just slightly locked up on entry there, and the ABS system caused him to understeer a little bit deeper under braking, and you can see that Williams still not able to close up here. In fact, it is Stock who is pulling away once again until they come up into the corners. As you can see that Kirk going a little bit deep there into 17, but I do think for Kirk right now it's one of those situations where he's just simply back in the car for not having to overwork it. As meanwhile Wedder versus what is Scott here, and Scott trying to siphon his way back on through as Wedder goes a little bit wide coming through 14, and as we look to the cameras here you can see it's the case as they make their way down the long straight here, down the Allman straight. We've got Wedder on the outside, Scott on the inside. That is Nathan Scott, and as they come roaring up towards turn 17, I think the Porsche driver at this point is going to potentially have it in the long run, and as they go into turn 17 under braking, we're going to see Wedder try and look for the trail brake return as they come through the corner. They go past the apex right now, and as they emerge 4 minutes to go, and as they come charging onto another lap, going on to what is their 28th tour of the circuit in this feature race right now, it's going to be one of those situations where Nathan Scott's got to try and hold on. Will the Dutchman come through? He's going to look for it as Wedder. He's got the overspeed here on the inside as Scott tries to hold on the outside here, but he loses the ground, and Wedder coming through like a missile on the inside. But now it's all about the heavy braking zone into 3, and Scott holds it. So you can see Matthew Prouting closing up and Gareth Mills behind. And as they make their way through the left-right-left combination of 3 through to 5 right now, Scott loses the position, but he's right there to go on the offensive again. As they make their way up towards turn number 7, and as they come out of the corners here and head all the way up, it's one of those situations right now, I should say, that where Matthew Prouting will be looking at this thinking, can I also get involved in this, or is it one of those situations where I've got to wait for an opportunity when the two take one other out? Well, I don't think he's got time to wait. Instead, he is going to have to find his way on through as soon as humanly possible right now, because he's running out of time. After this one, there's likely to only be 2 more laps, if that, and as they make their way all the way on through, our race leader is just coming across the timeline to go on to what for him is going to be lap number 29, the penultimate lap for him. And meanwhile, it's the case that this battle for P11 overall, P10 in class, is only starting to intensify even more. But speaking of intensifying, it's the case that Gareth Williams not able to intensify the fight versus Stock as they make their way through turn 17 once again. But you can see that Ford GT being bounced around there through the apex of turn 17. Sunset Bend really proving to shake our cars up as they make their way across that concrete surface, and as they make their way down towards turn 1 here, we are hearing that Dan Murray briefly getting ahead here. I think that might have been a slight glitch on our timing screen, but Murray right now in P9 chasing after what is Jamie Dory here, trying to find his way into this fight. Jamie Dory into the pits. Jamie Dory pitting at this late stage in the race. Is it because he's misfueled the car? Well, it means that Murray gains the position, and Dory's race has gone from good to a bit of a disaster as he's now all the way down as they make their way on through. And we can see that Murray right now up into P7 in class, and he will be pleased with this. He's not going to be able to catch up to Kelly Shorley, who's the best part of 9 seconds up the road, but Murray right now will be pleased. But meanwhile, a battle that has been building up, and it's finally materialised as we ride on board here with Gareth Williams in P5. He is chasing after Nigel Stock, and as they make their way up towards what is turn 10 right now, you can see it's the case that finally Stock has started to fall enough away from Kirk that he's not gaining the toe as much as he would like to. And as they come through 10 here and come up towards what is the Tower Corner once again, it's a situation where Williams has to be patient here. He's got to try and outfox Stock, and see Stock there drifts a little bit under braking. Stock is definitely starting to feel a bit of pressure. This is the closest battle out on circuit, and we're going to stay with it as they make the way on through, charging through what is into turns 14, 15 and 16. So as they come into 14 now, into the right-hander, and as they come through that right-hander, you can see how Gareth Williams just able to rotate the car more aggressively as they come through Le Mans corner here. The race leader is making his way through the final corner to go on to the final lap. The white flag is now out for Seal, but whilst Michael Seal's making his way around to go on to his final lap, it's the case that this battle between Stock and Williams waits just a little bit longer here as Williams is finally gaining somewhat on the long straight down the Allman straight. In terms of how much time he gained there in the toe, only 0.03 of a second. It's barely anything, but Williams will take it if he can, because he needs every inch of time as Paul Walton sets the fastest lap of the race, going on to the final lap, a 2-minute flat .130, the fastest lap
we've seen of anybody today. But regardless of that right now, whilst it is an achievement, the achievement that Williams will want is to outfox the Ford GT. But can he do it, as they've got one lap remaining? And as they come up into turn 3, will Williams find a way through this time? No, he's not close enough to try and get the move done. They make their way through 4, but you can see Stock really struggling now as they make their way through turn 5. It looks like that Ford GT is on the limit, and Stock is pushing everything he can from the Ford, from the V6 engine. It will be gunning as much as it possibly can, but the BMW M4 looks to the outside as they make their way down towards the hairpin. Under braking here, it's going to be the BMW on the very strong brakes versus the Ford GT. Whilst it's a bit of a boat, you can imagine that Stock is going to make that boat as wide as possible, make it sail away, not drop anchor as they leave the apex. And as they come charging up towards turn at number 9 and 10 right now, you can see that Kirk in the foreground of your picture holding firm as get. Williams looks to the outside here. Can he go for the cut back into 10? No, not able to. As Stock is able to close the apex off, but you can see Williams trying it. He's looking for every which way round. He's not able to find it as they now make the way up into 12. Williams looks around the outside. There's not enough of a run here to try and get the move on the outside into Tower Corner. They come out of the corner. Now they've got a long run down towards 16 here, and this is where Williams can potentially look for that opportunity as they make their way through. He's alongside. Stock's going to be on the inside to outside down into 14. They come on into the braking zone. Williams looks for it. He's not close enough, but he forces Stock to go a little bit deep. Will this unsettle Stock as they make the way through 15 and into 16? Well, as they come through 16 here, it's going to be the case. It's all about the drag race, and as they make their way down, it's the case that we have to look away and celebrate as Michael Seal comes out the final corner to take the win overall in the feature race and a flawless drive. The Ignium Motorsport driver takes the win in the Pro class, and meanwhile we see that Paul Walton, who has made a brilliant effort on the strategy, has got himself into P2 when all is said and done as he crosses the timing line there in P2 overall, P2 in class. Alistair Kirk in the end in P3, and then it will be a drag race to the finish line in the background of your picture, and it's Nigel Stock who finishes ahead of Williams by only in the end 500ths of a second, and Mark Baker will come home to take the win in the AM class in the end in P6 overall. A brilliant drive from the Team Tetra Rouge driver ahead of Kosh Kelly, and then behind him will be Dan Morey, who recovered in the end to P8 overall, P7 in class despite the contact on the open lap making him to an extra stop. Stuart P. Taylor in the end comes across the line, P9 overall, P8 in class, and then we've got quite a gap to Lamont Wedder here, who makes his way out of the final corner to come home in P10, completing our top 10 overall in this race as he comes across the line there, P9 in class, and in Gareth Mills, P2 in class in the AM class and P11 overall. How Gareth Mills will be pleased with that one, I'm sure, pleased as punch. Paul Williams in the end, P12, not to be his day at Sebring. Then Darren Doherty with a podium finish, P3 for the Altitude Esports driver in his class, P13 overall in the AM, and it's in the AM class in terms of that podium. Then Jamie Dory, P14 overall as he crosses the timing line ahead of Nathan Scott here. It has been one to remember for Nathan Scott just for the battling, and Paul Scott behind him will take P16 ahead of Paul Coburn, who comes home in P17, P4 in class. A brilliant drive from Coburn to come up to P4, and then Davide Favo in the end. I don't think you will have expected this one given all the battles, the moments, the damage to the car, but in the end we will see Favo come across the line in the battered Ferrari in P5 in class, P18 overall ahead of Stefan Albanese, P19, and it's going to be James Neve who completes our top 20 in the beautiful livery Castrol Ferrari there, based on, I think that's one of the Japanese Super GT liveries of the GT500 NSXs, as meanwhile we can see Stephen Holman crossing, not Stephen Holman, Sam Holman I should say, crossing the line then P21 ahead of Elwyn Sykes. And in terms of remaining drivers to finish their race, Matthew Prouting still making his way around on the corners, as I believe our next driver to cross the line is Stefan Vessels in the end, who pulls into the pits. Not to be his day in the feature race, that is to be certain, but everybody's race is over right now other than Matthew Prouting, who's making his way down towards turn number 17 right now. But a brilliant race up and down the field. It had it all in the feature race. It had strategy, it had daring overtakes, it had collisions, incidents, drama, you name it, it's had it. And indeed, whilst it's the case, the Apex Racing Academy lobby was very intense with almost 60 drivers. Coach Dave Academy and Next Level Racing lobby has proven, as Matthew Prouting crosses the line, the last of our finishers on the lead lap, it has proven, regardless of the calibre of drivers or the number of drivers, you can have fantastic racing. And speaking of that, we now get ready for our post-race winner interviews.
Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, well, we are back for our post-race interviews with our winners of the feature race in the respective classes. Now, I have been informed to tell you that Mark Baker could not make the interview tonight, unfortunately, due to a clash of personal circumstances, but I did have the chance to catch up with him prior to the race, albeit he dropped me a load of information and told me not to take a look at it, because I wasn't to know, of course, that he was going to be the winner, but he has dropped me some information, and so it's to read you out what he would have had to say in the post-race interview. So what he was saying is that with regards to at Daytona, he was in luck in the fact that at Daytona he was running a strong second, and then the leader in the AM class had a disconnection, and that meant that Baker picked up the win in the end. But now, as for Sebring, it was about turning a disaster of a sprint race into success, and indeed Baker was able to do it. And consistency, as always, is the key. You may not be the quickest, but to finish first, you have to finish, and that's the key thing. Or as the saying goes, to finish first you have to finish. Saying it in full, and say that one multiple times in quick succession, I dare you. And what he was also saying, with a little bit of sort of context, is that he joined the league last season, so in season 1, for something a bit different, and never thought he'd be challenging for wins and winning this season. So in season 2, he's really pleased with his season so far and looking forward to Road Atlanta, which is a circuit he does enjoy. So it's good to hear that from Baker in terms of his thoughts, and cracking thoughts from him. But meanwhile, we are just waiting to see if our winner in the Pro class, Michael Steele, was able to join us. We're just going to double check. He's in the waiting room, and we're going to be bringing him in. Hello, Michael. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can do, mate.
Michael, a brilliant drive from start to finish from yourself, taking the win at Sebring in the Pro class. How does it feel to be on the top step of the podium?
Yeah, it was definitely a mega race. Like, it is. Managed to get the break at the start and didn't think I'd hold off all of the faster guys coming through.
Well, definitely, you drove very consistently throughout and not a single foot wrong over the course of the 60 minutes. And I do have to ask, with regards to that start and trying to clear the drivers ahead of you, was there any particular strategy you went for in terms of just bolting, or was it the case of just take those moves as they arise?
No, it was literally a case of make the start, and then each lap was just about trying to go as fast as I could out front. It is, and build a gap, because I knew there would be the guys who were quick coming through.
Oh, definitely, and it worked out to your advantage. And then over the course of the pit window, with the lead that you'd built up, was there any concern that you might fall back into traffic, or was it one of those ones, you know what, this is just a simple stop, bring it in, get it done, and back out and on our way?
Yeah, I caught a bit of traffic with Stephen, I think it was, midway through the race, but followed him for maybe about five laps. His pace was good enough where I didn't need to push him and whatever. So I followed him for a bit, and then when I really started to hound him, he moved out my way. And other than that, I didn't really have much issue with traffic. It was a big enough track where I just stayed out as long as I could. All the time I had a clean air, I was trying to use it.
Oh, and it was brilliant as a result. And now looking ahead to Road Atlanta in a week's time, our final circuit on the American Tour of this season. How are you feeling for the very fast and high-intensity circuit?
Yeah, it is. If I can carry forward half of the momentum I had tonight, it would be a good going, and it is got a lot of support from a new team, which is definitely helping.
Oh, that's brilliant to hear, and we look forward to seeing you take to the Road Atlanta circuit in a week's time. But until then, congratulations on the brilliant win once again, and we look forward to seeing you out on circuit once more at Road Atlanta.
Yep, thank you, mate. See you next week.
All the best. So hearing there from Michael Steele, very happy with his performance in the feature, and also making that nod to his team there, Ignium Motorsport. Very happy to be working with them, and I do gather that Michael Steele put a lot of preparation into that feature race and made it work. Of course, whilst he did start up towards the front, and some would say that's given him an advantage, of course, starting towards the front gives anyone an advantage in a race, you have to make it count. Much like what Mark Baker was saying, it's about making those passes count and then just simply bringing the car home, because to come home first you have to finish. And a brilliant drive from Michael Silm. We'll be sure to see more of him over the coming rounds. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, that does bring to a conclusion our proceedings to tonight. And thank you very much for watching. If you do want to know more about the Next Gen Racing community, why not check us out on our official website, that is nextgenracing.co.uk, or alternatively our official Facebook group, that is facebook.com/groups/nextgenracing. Also, a huge thank you to our partners without whom we'd not be able to run Lobby 2 here. That is Coach Dave Academy. You can check them out at coachdaveacademy.com. And on top of that, Next Level Racing. That's nextlevelracing.com. But now, as we bring the curtain down on round number 2, we look ahead to Road Atlanta in a week's time, round number 3. And just to clarify, ladies and gentlemen, some of you have been tuning into both the Apex Racing Academy lobby and also the Coach Dave Academy Next Level Racing lobby, so lobbies 1 and 2. We are going to swap the broadcasts around due to the technical issues we have had with lobby 1 due to the volume of cast. We've now done what the technical issues, and we're going to flip the lobbies around, so you will be seeing the Coach Dave Academy Next Level Racing lobby live, so it'll be actually the drivers out on circuit as they are on Wednesday the 1st of December 2021, and then we'll be bringing you the Apex Racing Academy lobby on Thursday the 2nd of December 2021. You won't want to miss it, and indeed this circuit, as we were just discussing with Michael Sill, a very high intensity circuit here. As we can see, our reference lap has brought us by the Lamborghini Huracan of what is Kelly here as he makes his way on through the opening corners. This circuit being very different from our opening 2 circuits, but it's all about going up the hill and then coming down the hill, and it's a load of switching corners from left into right, right into left. And whilst we do have some heavy braking zones here, the big theme is about controlling the roll of the car and balancing the throttle as you do so. And if you can nail it, you're going to have a very fast lap. If you can't nail it, however, you could have a lap that sees you going off circuit or falling behind the main pack. It is going to be one of those circuits which I think is really going to catch drivers out, because we go from a circuit about slipstream and a circuit about handling and knowing when to pass to a circuit that's about carrying momentum, and that will complete our tour of the United States for the opening 3 rounds. You won't want to miss it, but until then, from myself and my colleagues at Next Gen Racing, stay safe, stay well, stay smiling. I have been Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain a Spit, and until next time, most importantly, remember to stay on track. Good night.